All right, welcome everyone. There was just a big super PTQ, super qualifier yesterday. It was actually 307 people, which I think is kind of big for Legacy, especially on a weekday. Um, the eventual winners were Nathan Stewart and JPA 93. I think JPA actually said, "Yeah, I'm going to bed after I've won my top four match. I talked to DEC. This is fine. So see ya." So Nathan's the technical winner, but really, once you make it to the finals, there's nothing except for Elo.
I do enjoy the contrast there, where Nathan, an incredible player who already has top aided some of the supers in this cycle, but he picked up elves for the first time for this tournament after getting smushed by Will Kruger in the NRG thing this past weekend and ended up winning the tournament. So a nice introduction to the deck there. And then of course JPA, for my money, in a tier of his own, best legacy player on Modo, playing the deck that he just crushed every tournament with for a long stretch. And two of the PTQs this week, Vintage and Legacy, have both been won by like the absolute S tier player for that format on the platform. So I don't know what that tells you about how much skill there still is in Magic these days, but there you go.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, your crackling is it's like kind of constant. It's not that bad, but it's kind of annoying. Can you move your mic or something? I'm not sure. Let's see. Let me Google. It
So I tried unplugging and replugging, and if that's no better, I can just remove the splitter and just do it
I think it's the splitter
directly.
probably causing it.
Okay. Oh, Shop's saying no crackling on his end, so
Oh, but it might be in the recording is the problem as well. So,
oh yeah. Okay, well I'll just de-split
okay.
myself, I guess.
Yep. Yo, Paraceline, welcome back.
Okay.
Welcome. Say something?
Is can you hear me?
Yeah, it's much better now, I think.
All right.
So,
Perfect.
all right.
Yeah,
So,
let's talk about the deck then while we have people here because
yeah.
I was you messaged me saying you were 5-0 in the BTQ and I was like, oh well, great, but I just assumed you were on stock Rug Delver or something, and I was a little surprised to see you playing this. So I know you streamed it a little over the past week, but what impressed you enough to jump on it for the BTQ?
So there's a factor of two things. The first point was who came up with this original deck list. It was Musasabi. So we've seen this person just be on an incredible tear in multiple formats with kind of weird decks, but that turn out to be surprisingly good in a lot of ways. So I figured I'd give it the try. The first time I played the deck, I think it felt a little bit off. So I went back to the drawing board and talked to a friend of mine, Mental Misstep on MTJ, who also qualified in Modern, not Legacy, but he is a big Legacy player also from the Germany, Austria area. So kind of a crusher. We talked a lot, and I'm like, I think what I said to him is, I think this deck is good, but I think there's some things I really don't like about it that Musasabi insisted on doing, which is fine. Like, if you're off on a first try, like 70 out of 75, that's a really good starting point, you know?
Yeah, no one cancelled Jarvis for talking about the Germany Austria area. Yeah, that's been geopolitically fraught somewhat in the past, but we can skip over
Oh,
that. But
shoot. I didn't realize that.
but yeah, but Musasabi is. I don't think people who don't follow Moto closely will know that name, but
yeah.
quietly has become one of the most consistent performers on Moto in recent months. I think they top eighted three mana traders events like back to back to back in a row with various events, always doing well in like the PTQs and the showcases and challenges and so on. And is that the point where now you wonder, okay, is this because the deck is good or is it because Musasabi is just incredible? But in this case, the answer might be both. Maybe they really are onto something because they, I think, won back-to-back challenges with this version of Food Chain.
I know they did really well, but the problem I had when I played it is it felt like the sideboard wasn't very good, first off. It was like close to great, but I think there were a few cards that were very questionable, and I think the main deck was a little bit too scatterbrained for me, is how I would put it. Um, so we started with his list, which is fine. And uh, if you look closely at the list, there's not actually that many changes. We cut a Manipulate Fate and a Missile Griffin for a Ponder and a Lightning Bolt. We changed the mana base slightly, and we cut Hydroid Crisis for a second Ballista. So on its, when you say it like that, it doesn't sound like much, but then you realize that this deck basically just draws a lot of cards almost every game, and there's a bunch of tutors that changing small things like that actually does matter quite a bit.
Yeah, Manipulate Fate, main purpose in the deck, of course, just to thin the deck. So your Ponder kind of deck thinned as well. But in all seriousness, you are kind of like a 2.5 card combo deck, right?
Yep.
Where you need the food chain, you need the Miss Hollow Griffin / Squee the Immortal, which is the main incentive to play red, actually, is that you get to play Imperial Recruiter, which is kind of the same as Ranger Captain or Recruiter of the Guard for that purpose. But the thing that finds you your infinite mana payoff in Ballista or Crisis also now finds your creature that exiles itself infinitely to make mana with food chain. So you get to add that layer of consistency to the combo there. And I do want to highlight how funny it is that Uro is firstly just an incredible card that you want to play in your deck if you can, but also Uro exiling Miss Hollow Griffin actually does come up a decent amount, just to put that back in the zone where you can replay it again. So I do like those changes where Manipulate Fate. It comes up sometimes where you get 2 Griffins in your Squee, and then you just start casting your Griffins for like this weird fair board control plan. But by and large, I think you just want the consistency that Ponder provides, and the 4th Ponder, you need to have a good reason to cut that card from your deck for anything else, really.
The other problem is, I don't think a lot of the time you actually need 3 Miss Hollow Griffins, 1 Squee in your deck. And they're kind of clunky cards to draw naturally. The one good thing about Griffin is it's the best card to pitch to Force of Will, because Miss Hollow Griffin is real nonsense. You can cast it from Exile Zone. The real reason we cut a Manipulate Fate for a Ponder was mana curve, really. Like, how many 2-mana spells do you need compared to 1-mana spells? You generally want 1-mana spells every game.
Yeah, and there's an interesting dynamic with this deck where you see the 4 Icefang Coatls, and you assume that card is it's a generically good card, right? And it's the kind of filler that you put in when there's no pressing need for anything else. But in this deck, on the turn where you cast Food Chain, you really want to have a creature that you can exile to cast your Squee or Griffin, and then start going off from there. So it's almost like a weird ritual stapled onto the most generic, filler board control card you can imagine.
And the one thing I will mention about the sideboard, I actually realized that I did only change 2 cards, but I think they're very 2 important cards. The Uro and Relic were not in his sideboard. However, he had Toski, Bearer of Secrets, and Surgical Extraction. Now, I'm going to just say real quick, I don't think Toski is good enough for Legacy for a lot of reasons. When I first looked at it, I'm like, oh, this card's for Bant Miracles. And when I thought about it more and more, I realized that didn't make a lot of sense, because there's really nothing good to Swords to Plowshares in this deck, except if you play Toski, that becomes the most appealing Swords to Plowshares target, really.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that there are some formats where Toski's uncounterability and indestructibility really do count for a lot, and it is really hard to get that thing off the board. In Legacy, the best control shell just has 4 Swords to Plowshares, which, as you say, maybe they want to swords your birds or something, but for the most part, they don't really want to swords anything else, and so giving them a good target for that isn't a good place to be.
And the thing about Relic over Surgical is, often in this deck, you actually Relic yourself for the Miss Hollow Griffin. But I think Relic is just so good versus opposing Uros that playing that over Surgical makes sense. And I didn't expect a lot of Reanimator or Hogak style decks where Surgical would be better, but not by enough better that I really need to play Surgical over Relic,
Yeah, a few years ago when Deathrite Shaman was legal, that card was a really big deal in this deck, where that filled the role of Birds of Paradise as your 1-mana Ram creature, but that could also infinitely exile your own Miss Hollow Griffins to keep recasting them while getting life in the process. So you found this hidden 4th mode on that card. But also, I think having the additional Uro and the Relic and so on, if you do want to play that more fair game in a post-board game, you are much more well-equipped to do that when you have 3 Uros in your deck and a bunch of the usual control pieces.
Yeah, so my plan in a lot of the post-board games, especially when I don't think comboing is necessary, is to shave on food chains, shave on the clunky things, and just become an Uro mid-range deck. And we've seen, well, in how many formats? Like, really, how many formats has that been the best thing to do? I can't even count anymore.
Basically, all of them where you could play Uro. That was the certainly the best mid range deck, and often just the best deck outright as well. Um, did you think about for those games where you semi transform or fully transform, having some kind of high impact recruiter target, so that could actually represent a finisher?
Yeah, so if you were really going to go all in on that plan, Krasis would be better as like as the recruiter target. But the thing I found is Krasis is a very, very, very clunky card in Legacy. Like, it's not like standard or what's the other format? Historic? I guess historic is,
Pioneer, yeah.
well, yeah, I guess in those formats you had a lot more time to develop lands, and all of the decks that played Krasis had a lot more lands in them, so your Krasis would be like a banger every time. Here, like, I would be surprised if you got more than like X=4. Modulo the games where we have Food Chain obviously doing the thing, but also sometimes Food Chain would just like ritual you to a big Krasis as well. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's kind of close.
I found the same issue with Shark Typhoon in some of these blue soup decks
Mm-hmm.
where the the scaling on that card does not matter nearly as much in Legacy as it does in the smaller formats, because your resources are so much more constricted and you cannot rely on games getting to the point where you have 6 or 7 lands in play, right?
Yeah, and a few other things. Someone asked about Sylvan Library. Where I was going to play Sylvan Library, Stefan and I discussed it, and we just decided sideboarding a third arrow is better than Sylvan Library, which like kind of sounds goofy. Like, why isn't it in your main deck? And the reality is, the deck is really tight as it is. It's hard to have slots for everything you want in the main deck as well.
Yeah, I could see wanting the library either in matchups where they can get grindy, but where you can also need specific cards quickly, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe not the exact mirror, but kind of other similar combo decks in the same space, or against stuff like Death and Taxes or Esper or something, where
Mm-hmm.
the continuous advantage of library is important, but Uro itself is actually pretty vulnerable and it's hard to make it stick.
And two last points. The mana base Musasabi had, I don't think it actually made a lot of sense. There was like a random waterlogged grove over the second tropical island. I'm like, that is actually just nonsense to me. And the last thing was there was another Scalding Tarn over the second Vista, and I think that's wrong because this is essentially a blue-green deck almost every game that happens to have a red splash. Uh, what you're going to want is basically Island Forest in the early turns almost every time. So having another Vista over the third turn, I think, makes more sense.
Yeah, there's a second order effect of the most recent round of bans where, because Astrolabe and Oko are gone, cards like Blood Moon and Wasteland are much more important again.
Mm-hmm.
You see Basusa in the top 8 of every Legacy tournament with Mono Red Prison and so on. And so being able to consistently access basics and just rely on casting your spells off those basics is a pretty big deal, I think.
Yeah, and even like you look at this deck, there's a bunch of dual lands. There's also sideboard Magus of the Moon, and
Love it.
actually, I was talking to Sam Pardee as well. He said he was vaguely interested in this deck. I respect Sam a lot, even if he doesn't play a lot of Legacy, obviously. But he said it makes sense to have those high bullet sideboard cards like Static Caster, Oof, Sage, Magus, when there are effectively 4 copies of all of them. Very, very Pod-esque in a way, you know.
Definitely, and he has obviously a great pedigree with that deck. I think that idea of, well, if I put 1 copy of this card, then I effectively have an extra 3 or 4 copies,
Mm-hmm.
because in this case Imperial Recruiter, in other cases maybe a card like Call of Calling or something.
Yep.
You do have to question how quickly you need to find that card, where often you have time to cast it if you draw it, but you don't have time to tutor for it and have it be as effective. I
Yeah.
don't think that's too much of a concern here necessarily, but you can imagine games where against, Turbo Depths or something,
Mm.
drawing Makers of the Moon will be great. Having to spend 3 mana to put Makers in your hand where it's now vulnerable to discard or something,
Mm.
and it's face up, maybe that's significantly worse.
Yeah. I don't know. Magus is not really a hate card for that matchup. I think where that card shines for this deck is, imagine casting that versus like a bug control deck, which incidentally there's a ton of copies of bug control. It actually had an abysmal win rate, like 44%. I'm not surprised. I think bug control is aged poorly as hell, but people love playing it because
Hmm.
A deck full of good cards, how could it be bad? Well, you look at Jund and Modern, question mark.
So how are people building these bug decks? Because I was looking at some of them for the challenge and the showcase this weekend, but I wasn't sure where to start. So it sounds like the answer is just don't start at all. Run for the hills, find something else. But what were those flawed bug decks looking like?
So the one and the most common one I've played against in the past few days, and I in fact play against it in this tournament, is it has Life from the Loam. It has a bunch of like cheap spot removal like Fatal Push, Abrupt Decay. It has Sylvan Library, it has Uro, because why not? And it has Jace. It's just like you try to imagine how Loam plus Uro go well, and they actually do go well together. That was something I was considering the Rug Delver style shells of playing both Loam and Uro, but the problem is, I think you just spend too much time dirtling with your bug deck, and the mana curve is too high, and your removal's not as good as if you had played white instead of black.
There was, I think, a bug deck in this top eight that had a lot of those same cards, but also Elvish Reclaimer, which
Yeah.
addresses some of those issues where you have this powerful one-drop threat that can, go up the ground or start attacking. You can back it up with Disruption, but then also in the late game, that can find you your Bog or Karakas when those cards are good. So maybe that's a direction to take it, but obviously not much time to optimize that before the weekend.
Yeah, so I think that about covers it for why I picked this deck. I actually did play like 2 weeks with Rug Delver before this event, and something felt off. I couldn't really tell you what. The data showed it was still a fine choice, but it actually did perform worse than Food Chain, which basically, I don't know. I guess my intuition was correct. I can't really tell you why. Just something felt off. I tend to trust my instinct in those spots because why? Like, what's the point of playing all these games to not build an intuition otherwise?
We're back in that point in the pendulum of Legacy where Rug Delver is only a tier 1 deck as opposed to by far the best deck. That playing anything else is kind of a mistake. So always good to recognize where in that cycle we are.
So let's get to the first match. The first match, it's against a name you might recognize, Triosk. For those of you who don't know, this is one of the, well, maybe not anymore, but it used to be one of the best Japanese players, Yuki Ichikawa. I don't have a lot of data on him for Legacy, so I just kind of assumed Death and Taxes or a Rug.
He's been streaming a bunch of different things, I think,
Okay.
recently, but is also someone who likes to show up with a good list of the best decks. So yeah, in the dark, I would assume, Rug or maybe some kind of blue control deck.
All right, so let's take it slowly. All right. So few questions here. If you think your opponent is Rug or Death and Taxes, is this a keep, and why?
This is one of those awkward hands of this deck where, like, if things go well, you just completely destroy them and the game isn't close. But you can also imagine how you just don't participate in this game whatsoever. And especially against a deck like Rug, which could very easily, bot your bird, daze your next thing, or wasteland you somewhere in there and you just don't get to do anything. But I think that's more of a kind of structural issue with the deck than anything else. And I don't know if you can really afford to be shipping back this kind of hand, even if you know your opponent's on the kind of deck where this could be risky.
So I think on the play, you pretty much have to. On the draw, I'm actually much more inclined to ship this hand for what it's worth. But it's possible you're supposed to just keep in both scenarios and just accept that this is how you've decided to construct your deck. And you just take your losses to, not drawing lands or your birds getting plowed or bolted and wasteland,
Yeah. Adam MTG in the chat asks, what's the difference between Bant and Rug Food Chain besides Sword versus Bolt and changing the color on the recruiters? The difference there actually is most whitelists don't run the white recruiter. They run Ranger Captain of Eos, which can fetch your Ballista for the kill, but also lets you kind of silence the opponent to force through your food chain on the combo turn. That in turn strains the mana base a little bit more, so there are some trade-offs involved there. You also get access to cards like Teferi Time Raveler, which kind of fill a similar role while also just being fantastic across the board. But I do think the Rug list is a lot more streamlined and is probably the way to go if you want to play Food Chain for now.
And one other thing is red versus white in this deck is a question of Pyroblast versus not Pyroblast post board, I think, which is actually a big deal.
And especially when you're trying to transform into like this weird Uro deck, I think Pyroblast often, especially against like Rock Delver or something, is pretty big there.
All right, so let's get to the game. I think I decide to keep. Yeah, I think once I had the same concerns that you did, that maybe I don't get to participate in the game, but once you've signed up for the deck, this is what you've got. Well, so I guess I was 50% correct.
Yeah, and this is kind of the best possible outcome, right? In terms of you get a chance to untap with birds and cast Ponder, and even draw Lightning Bolt, but there's a question of if and when we want to pick a fight over that Lightning Bolt. It seems like the priority here is just finding the second land at the very least. So if we think the opponent maybe has a form of interaction, do we almost want to bait them with the bolt, or is resolving Ponder through days to start off with more important?
I think it's more important, but the real question is, I quick passed a little bit. That Ponder was Brainstorm, Force. Now the question is, do you keep? If not, what's your plan? I guess what's your plan? Period. After seeing that Ponder.
So if we keep it, let's say we draw Forcible and then we have shields up on that turn. The next turn we draw Brainstorm and we get to see 2 new cards if the Brainstorm resolves. There's still a decent chance that we could end up Brainstorm locked there. That being said, like think about what the math is on that versus if we shuffle, we draw a random card. The next time we draw another random card, the odds that we find, let's say if we're looking for exactly a fetch land, the odds don't actually change all that much, right? Like it's so even though there's this specter of getting Brainstorm locked, I don't think that's actually a bigger concern than the alternate case of we shuffle and then just brick anyway.
Yeah, so I actually came to that conclusion, even though it looks goofy as hell to ponder, miss your land drop, and not really do much except bolt the Delver. I did come to the conclusion that I think drawing a Brainstorm next turn, drawing 2 Brainstorms over the next 2 turn cycles is better than just shuffling to draw 2 random cards. So let's see what I do. I'm pretty sure I keep and just draw the Force into my hand. Yeah, I think I came to that conclusion actually pretty quickly, like 10 seconds or so, but I wanted to see what you thought before I revealed the answer. And I'm so happy that I didn't get Wastelanded there. I think if I get Waste Bolted, the game is literally just too hard to win. So, didn't really discuss this, but I think the creatures in this matchup are not what you actually care about Force of Willing most of the time. I think what actually happens most of the time in this matchup, especially with a hand like this, is defending your combo.
Yeah, I want to just step out for a second, but do you think that when the Lightning Bolt resolves, is that a clear signal that they don't have days? Or given that they have Tarmogoyf, are they and you've missed a land drop, are they maybe happy to just let that go, play the Goyf, and then save the days for some more high-impact play?
I would not write days off. Essentially, a good way of asking it. I think it's very possible they still have days, and they didn't even set up the Delver or anything, so it's very possible that they just don't care about the Delver. So that's my read on the situation. I think Dom said he had to go for a sec, so I can answer some questions from the chat. Tygon Rug Delver. It's because with Uro in the deck, the mana is much more strained, Pascal. You, like, Taiga Trop Volk is a lot safer, especially with Uro involved. Yeah, so I think Bant versus Rug, the big gain is actually Teferi 3 and Ranger Captain. Why not black instead of red? Well, there's no good analog for Imperial Recruiter or Ranger of Captain of Eos in black.
All right. So,
did you hear my answer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Welcome back. Yeah, I would not write days off, but I just think the Delver also doesn't matter that much to them. It's just I won't be able to Lightning Bolt a Tarmogoyf, so like whatever. All right. So think you just have to Brainstorm because missing a land again is not acceptable. And look at this, they fawn it. All right, so this is a very interesting play. What are you thinking now?
I'm thinking that they're trying. They smell weakness, right? After the
Yep.
missed land drop last turn, and it's got to be weird for them when we ponder, we keep, and then we miss a land drop, and now we're leading on brainstorm. So they might think this brainstorm is the key to getting us out of this hole, and that if they force it, there's a good chance that we just don't really do anything else. Also, if this brainstorm resolves and they're able to find, let's say they can ponder or brainstorm themselves into a lightning bolt or another way to kill the birds of paradise, or a wasteland even, they can really capitalize on that advantage. So it makes sense for them to fight over this, and because if you miss a land drop, maybe your hand is so flush with action that one force later isn't going to get the job done.
Yep.
So you could have exactly what you have, which is 2 copies of Food Chain, where, unless they're about to win the game next turn, they win the fight over one. That's okay. You just play the second one and then can combo off from there. So I think it makes sense, even not knowing the rest of their hand, for them to fight over this, and therefore I think it makes sense for you to fight over it as well.
Agreed. So this is just a free card to pitch anyway, so it's like whatever. I think I spend like 2 seconds thinking about it. I'm like, this just seems obvious. And look at this, we just got a good old fashioned stack battle over a brainstorm. Yeah, so everything resolves. Obviously, I can't do anything else this turn, and we'll see how much pressure they can put on. Waste is really bad for me. I really just hope they don't have another threat. If they do, it's going to be really scary. But guess what? They're hellbent now with 8 power. This is terrifying. Alright, so I'm pretty much in the hole now. I think I'm going to lose, but Brainstorm found a land at least. With them being hellbent, I think the second Food Chain and the second Recruiter don't have that much utility. But you could also make a case for putting the Ballista back as well. It's between these 3 cards, essentially. You should put 2 back.
The case for keeping Ballista is that, in theory, Ballista is worse than another Recruiter, right? Because if you're going off, Recruiter can get the Ballista, but there is a line where you have exactly enough mana to just Ballista on 1 as a charm blocker, and that, if they're dealing damage in increments of 4+4 this turn and then 4+4 the next turn, that could be the difference between having to charm block with your Birds of Paradise, let's say, and just not being able to cast a spell again. So I think if you're putting one of those 2 back, it should be the second Recruiter instead. And also there's the fact that if we're trying to go off with Food Chain, resolving Food Chain is just the first step. We also need to jump up in mana to the point where we can cast Griffin, have it resolve, and then go through all the motions there. So if they do find, like, even just a daze or something, they could very plausibly just choke us off doing anything else. So we know we want the land. Beyond that, as long as we have at least 1 Food Chain, I don't think it really matters what we do from there.
Yeah, and I'm also just going to pretend they're not going to draw, like, relevant things, because I think it's just, like, impossible to win if they draw, like, a lightning bolt or a daze. So I'm just pretending everything's going to go right. So they are hellbent. They have no cantrips. They haven't cast a cantrip, so I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah, so Food Chain and Recruiter, I think, go back here. Yeah,
that's what I did as well, because I think I foresaw this being a chump blocker for the exact reason you mentioned, because this is 8+8. It's still going to be really hard to win this game, for a lot of reasons, because I'm at 7. I have to go to 6. And actually, here I realized I should have just fetched main phase. They showed me a Stifle already. If they draw a Stifle for this turn, I will have lost this land for no reason. So that's a mistake. And here I'm just hoping I don't get Stifled, because if I do, then I feel silly. All right, so Ponder. I don't think you can ever keep these. Like, they don't do anything.
No.
Well, actually, you're literally dead if you keep them. So yes, that's a good reason not to keep them. Land is a terrific draw.
Yeah. And so now we get in exactly that situation, right? Where in theory we can chump for a turn with Ballista, and if they have nothing, then that's all we need.
They draw a Brainstorm, which is terrifying. That's so many looks at things that kill me,
Yeah, like, even if they don't directly kill you right here, there are so many things they could find that just put the game away. But
I think they just find another Tarmogoyf, which is literally... that doesn't change anything. So let's see if we have to win. So note, a fetch land would not have been good enough, but exactly any untapped land that's not a fetch is good enough, because I go Food Chain, play my land, exile this to make 2 red, play Recruiter, get Ballista, and go infinite. So let's see if they have days. Oh, good thing it's not a waterlogged grove. Oh my god.
Yes.
What if that was a waterlogged grove right there?
Funnily enough, Iceman Corral would not do it, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
Food Chain only makes one color of mana, but exactly Scavenging Ooze would also get the job done here.
Oh, also they have 0 cards, so of course they don't have days. This is. I'm not going to subject to anyone to watching the clicking part. That's the least interesting part of it. So we squeaked that one out at 1 life on turn 6 versus a lethal board by top decking not a fetch land. It's really nice. All right. How do I go back? All right. So game 2. I'll look at how I sideboard real quick. I side out 1 Food Chain, 1 Ballista, 2 Force of Will, 2 Manipulate Fate.
This could become a cookie clicker stream if we're so
No,
inclined.
shut up. No.
No?
I know exactly what game you're talking about, and I know everyone was obsessed with it for a while. We do not idle clicker games on this stream.
Okay, so let's just dwell on the sideboarding quickly because
Mm-hmm.
I think most people would assume, oh, they're a counter magic heavy deck. Veil of Summer is going to be good, right? But
Yep.
I guess the idea is that uh, if you're de-emphasizing Food Chain, you have fewer high impact things that you want to force through, and then also like it's actually harder to get Veil to resolve in a world where like then days becomes a lot better and so on. So
Mm-hmm.
and there's also just not that much space, right? Like you're already
Yep.
finding yourself having to cut some of these combo pieces and interactive cards, so it's hard to find space for Veil, and then finding a window to use Veil is difficult too.
Yeah. So originally, when I had the sideboard plan mapped out before, I was trying to fit them in, and I realized for all the reasons you listed, the mana commitment is a big deal, and also like I'm not as reliant on the combo. I'm just trying to Uro them because I think that deck is notoriously soft to Uros. If you just Uro them once or twice, they lose. You know, it's pretty simple. So yeah, you don't have to be a combo deck versus them, which is the other reason to set up Manipulate Fate because at its core, like that card is good at grinding and good at setting up your combo, but I don't think you need it versus Rogue Delver, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's see what happens. By the way, to answer, I don't do this shit versus Delver. It's just not a reliable plan. All right. So this on the draw is basically the same hand. It's a little bit worse than the hand we had last time. What do you think, real quick? Just give me the 2 seconds version.
Uh, exactly the same diagnosis. Great hand could very easily just not do anything.
All right, so let's see what I decide. All right, I ship it. This hand's much better, I think. Yeah, you can't really mulligan this one. I think I bottom Ballista probably. It's like Ballista or Recruiter. None of the other cards are allowed to be bottomed.
Yeah, this is kind of why I don't like mulliganing that first hand, and maybe why I don't like de-emphasizing the Food Chain plan, because
Okay.
we've seen Rug Delver already be somewhat competitive against explicitly controlling decks or decks that are built with that matchup and that game plan in mind. And so transforming yourself into a weaker version of that, I don't know how realistic that plan actually is in the long term.
I think it's realistic because your deck still beats Clothis in the long game, which is really the issue, I think, in a lot of the non-combo-y, like, Uro decks.
Does it still beat Clothis in a long game if your plan is Uro now?
I mean, you still have a bunch of... I didn't take out any of the Griffins or the Squeeze, so yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So I did bottom the Ballista. I think that's just the most natural card to bottom. Another Brainstorm is actually kind of awkward. And I'm going to ponder over bolting there because I want to see if I actually need to bolt that on turn 1 or what my plan is. And now we found the perfect plan. Like, this is what my deck is designed to do in a best board game, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The Delver doesn't flip, so I'm happy I didn't just waste my turn 1 bolting it. It's also just fetching Mountain on turn 1 is kind of awkward when your plan is Uro. Even though I think I probably end up doing it here. But we'll see what happens. Bolt, huh? Alright, I put a Ballista and something else back. Shit, I think I put another cantrip back, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense. There are diminishing returns on those for sure. So now I guess the question becomes, do you want to use the bolt here and risk it getting dazed, or are you happy, taking the hit and then being able to kind of resolve it more safely later on?
Yeah, that's the question. I think I'd probably end up bolting because, like, my hand is, like... I'm probably going to have to walk to daze at some point, so you might as well walk into it as early as possible. Yeah, I think I actually did fetch the mountain because I think I am going to just plan on fetching all basics for the Uro if possible.
I think the issue with that is it's the classic legacy dilemma, right? Of you
Yeah.
can fetch basics to play around Wasteland in the short term, but you may have to fetch a non-basic eventually anyway just to cast your spells. And I think that's true here when like
Mm-hmm.
we are so far away from actually escaping the Uro at this point that if we find ourselves needing to, let's say we just draw Tropical Island, right, or Tiger, that's
Mm-hmm.
still a good Wasteland target. So we may have to just bite that bullet now if they have it, and accept that that's going to happen.
For what's worth, I didn't point this out. There are actually 10 fetch lands in the deck for that reason. So it's actually a little bit more likely you can navigate into that situation in this deck list. But obviously, if you draw one dual lands of a fetch at any point, it's like pretty hard to do that. And
I guess the other thing too is when you have Ice Bank Rattle, you really want to be able to activate that, so to speak.
exactly, yeah. So that's why I actually end up main phasing the Ice Fang. No? Iro? Okay, I guess that also makes sense. Huh. Ponder's a pretty good pickup. I can just cast it and not feel bad, obviously. I'm kind of surprised I Uroed instead of maintaining Ice Fang, but... So this is pretty good, and this is actually one of the reasons you're allowed to fetch a lot of basics, is because Carpet fixes everything.
Yeah, Carpet is such a good card. There's a reason that it's 60 tickets now on Modo,
Yeah.
despite being a common or uncommon.
It's an uncommon from Saga.
Yeah, and to me, Carpet should be. You need a good reason not to have Carpet in the sideboard of basically any green deck that can cast it. In Legacy, it's just so good at getting out from underneath the resource denial plan of Delver.
It blanks all of their dazes and spell pierces if they play them.
It's decently expensive in paper as well. It looks like good $25 on TCG Player.
And look at this. This is green, add 4 mana. That's absurd.
Dark Ritual could never.
Yeah. So I think I just, like, obviously it's just time to start slamming, you know? I mean, this is what my deck was designed to do. And the Uro sticking, I think... Oh, this is just an excellent sign for me. If this is happening...
Love to see it.
I mean, like, I don't... Yeah, I don't know. And obviously... The Birds is probably safe from getting killed because 2 bolts were just spent on an Uro. And now I just feel like they have nothing. Like, it's very clear to me that they're probably sitting on empty now. One thing I did that maybe I should... Well, it's kind of complicated. What you should actually do relatively often is respond to the Carpet trigger and just cast Brainstorm or your cantrip to see what colors of mana you want to make with Carpet if you want to do something pre-combat main. Now, in this scenario, I'm probably not going to attack or anything, so it doesn't matter, but it is something that actually comes up and is more subtle than it might appear. Just the information aspect, obviously. So Brainstorm. Well, no shuffle effect, but I think these are probably just good enough to just like start, casting spells and seeing if they're dead. I just put back the 2 clunky not escape creatures. Cast from exile creatures. I guess that's a better name for them.
Yeah. So the plan here is just to cast both of our Ice Fangs.
Yeah, and the birds. And like I don't know, with double Ice Fang, it's not really that easy for them to attack with mandrills into me, right?
Could we have because we had 2 mana left over and we cast the birds, could we have cast both Corrals and Drive for the Griffin? I guess there's no reason to make Days a fine card if they have one.
Now, if they've drawn Days, I'm working on making it as bad as possible. Yeah. And this is a joke. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like my opponent can just never win now. Uh, Look, the concession, because they know Uro just arrives because of this brainstorm. You'll have to see it. My clock did not stay particularly high in that game two or the match. It's kind of crazy. So tough opponent round one, but we kind of just eked it out. Game one and game two was, frankly, that was kind of a slaughter. Like,
You
it
say
just
would you say you Yuki'd it out or you Ishikawa it out?
I U'd it out.
Okay.
All right, round two against Bryant Cook. So we know what we're in for. This is always Storm, always the epic Storm.
This is a murderer's row of a tournament so far.
Yeah. Basically, this matchup, I think the only thing that matters is trying to race them to a kill. Uh, I don't think this races them to a kill often enough, so this is probably a mulligan. And this is just much better, I think. This actually is the kill. I don't have a force or anything, but here's the thing. Remember when you talked about how Ice Fang is the glue? That is a dark ritual on turn 3 if you play Food Chain. I think that ends up being my plan. I think I'm just going to Hail Mary or Brainstorm and see if I Ice Fang or any 2-drop works. If I find a land plus a 2-drop, I can kill on turn 3, right?
Yeah.
And like versus another combo deck, that's exactly what you want to do. So I bought him Squee because I already have the Griffin. And also, I know that version of the deck nowadays doesn't play as much discard, if any. It's usually Thought Season the sideboard only. Usually they defense grid in Veil of Summer to try to force their stuff through instead of discard spelling me, which makes me happier. So here's the Hail Mary Brainstorm. I told you why I'm doing it. Bang! If I get to turn 3, my opponent will lose. You see it? So I just put back, I don't know, Fate definitely should go and probably a land. And I just redraw the land. So this looks pretty good for me. I mean, as long as I don't get killed. But then spells start going in the stack, and I'm scared now. I need someone to hold me, Dom. I need someone to hold me. And so I have to respond to defense grid, obviously. All right. But guess what? I'm not dead. Bang! You're dead. And this is an advantage of playing Food Chain over like an Uro pile. Just a stock Uro pile cannot do this on turn 3. You know? Let's see if I mess it up. I don't think I do. I think it's so hard to mess it up here.
What would you say is the average number of clicks that it takes to kill from this position?
Average? I mean,
Yeah.
It's 4 clicks per cast of that. 5 to exile, 6 to click on it. So it's 6 times. And you have to make 38 mana, so 6 times 38. And then you have to right click, save all targets. That's 6 times 38 plus 1. Then plus 19 more. Because I have the
like
targets. Plus 38.
250 range, probably?
No, it's like 400, probably.
Oh,
but I knew what I was signing up for. That's fine.
Jarvis, did you see... I saw a screenshot of someone comboing off with the deck on Moto where they made the left-hand part of the screen, the bit where you have to click on Griffin from Exile, massive. And so that put it close enough to the food chain itself that going back and forth was less of an ordeal.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I had my Exile right next to my mana, so I could just like go back and forth between paying and clicking on it, but I would have to do that first. So I don't know. There's definitely a better way to optimize it. It was not an issue for me. I did not actually ever come close to timing out because I don't think it actually happens with this deck. And I think Brian just concedes here. Yeah, he didn't like. It's just a waste of time if you know your opponent's not going to misclick and they're not going to time out. All right, so game 2. I'll look at how I sideboarded real quick. So I took out the Uros. I don't think they're good. I don't think the bolts are good, and I think one Manipulate Fate can go. Because I think it is a combo matchup, but it's not a grindy combo matchup. It's like speed matters. Collector Oof is great, and all of the counter magic and veils are like pretty good.
And Manipulate Fate is essentially just another copy of one of your combo pieces, and
Yeah.
I guess it kind of cantrips, but um, it's not actually that. It doesn't really add a new dimension to what you're doing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I think you can safely cut that. Is there an argument for the relic? I guess
Not
Tess
really.
is less reliant on like Pass and Flames lines and so on. So,
They literally
uh,
don't have Pass and Flames in their deck, if that's what you mean.
oh, Brian has moved beyond that now.
No, it hasn't been in the deck for like 1.5 years.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So like, this is the problem. I'm aware it's hard to keep up with deck lists, but it is sort of my. If you want to be really good at Legacy, looking at all of the deck lists is actually something you need to do.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and if I knew I was playing against Brian, I would obviously go to his
yeah,
Goldfish page or just
yeah.
his website and see what what was
Oh,
going on.
sure,
But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, no, Relic doesn't do anything except it makes an Echo maybe worse by not shuffling in more LEDs, But so I don't think Relic does anything.
I mean, saying Tess is an ad nauseum deck doesn't really clarify things because the Pass and Flames decks are also ad nauseum decks, other than
Yeah.
I guess Ruby Storm or whatever. But um, you know,
All right, so you look at this hand, and then you think about the fact that it actually has two forces versus a combo deck,
oh, I'm
and
snapping this off.
yeah, I
Yeah.
am too. It's just obviously if you don't draw a blue source, it's like pretty bad. But I think this hand's just so good that you're supposed to keep on average. So Bright Molt to 6, LED, not forcing that. Chrome Mox, some consideration forcing that, but probably not. All right. So now here's the question: do you force this, or do you wait for them to get a payoff and force it? They have one card.
So they can get a payoff, or they can get Veil slash Fluster, right, or even
Yeah.
Defense Grid, which is part of
Mm.
the issue with waiting. And then if you end up having to search for something yourself, they get it back for a turn, can maybe get something else to help them push through. So that being said, it's tricky right now, right? Because their mana generation is pretty limited. And if they have to, um, I guess there's maybe a sequence where, like, let's say their card in hand is Echo or something,
Right.
then they could Talisman for Veil, could just cast Veil, see what happens, and then if Veil resolves, then they're good to go. But otherwise, if they have to use LED at some point to set up for their payoff card, then you might just be able to get them with your force more easily. So with that in mind, I kind of want to just let this go. But what was your take here?
So my take on the situation was I thought it was pretty likely that they had another payoff card. So if you let this one resolve, you just will have to deal with a Veil later. And it also provides Metalcraft for the Mox Opal in case they do go like crack lead, just cast Echo, see what happens. So I actually decided to force it, I think.
Okay.
And I think I pitched the Griffin, obviously. Oh, I ended up fawning it. What's the reason to do that? It kind of is the same all around, right?
Not really though,
Wait,
right?
no, I should
Because
force it, right?
you
Like,
should force a will because
oh yeah,
if like force of negation is better against stuff like Echo specifically, and then
yeah.
also
Hard casting
if
force is more
yeah, for
likely.
hard casting as a game goes long is actually a big deal. So
Yeah, that was a mistake. All right, excellent draw. Just any win. Well, any blue win is an excellent draw, obviously. So let's see what happens. Now I'm in the exact same situation again. So I kind of feel like it's incoherent to not force it again, but I don't know. What are you thinking?
hmm. I think when you get to the point where the rest of your hand is starting to come together, like we can start casting out Ice Fangs and so on, then um, I think it's more acceptable to let this one go. The issue is like if the combo that they can assemble over time is protection, where that mostly means Veil plus a threat, then this can represent either half of that going long. Whereas you
Exactly.
can
Yeah.
imagine them getting stuck with either a bunch of threats where they can only play one given the constraints of LED, and you get to tag that later on, or a bunch of protection and then just sitting around not doing anything. So
Hmm.
given that, it might be okay to force here.
And the one last thing I actually didn't mention either of those turns is if they had Veil, it's not like they can Veil to protect it because of how the mana situation is. But if I let them have this, then it's easier to. If their last card is Veil, then it's just easier to protect it. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing I was thinking about. So I think I decided to force it for basically the same reason I forced last turn. Again, I think it's a close decision. I wouldn't fault anyone either way. Bird's not the best draw here. I think I decided not to play it because I think just playing Coatl is better, but I'm about to have some regrets. So I don't know if you know his list. Burning Wish getting Echo obviously makes sense here. Like
Yeah.
he has 0 cards, I have 3, so it's +4 for me, +7 for him. It's just kind of insane, frankly.
So I guess the question in response to Echo is, do you develop the Ice Fang or do you let this go so that if your new hand contains Brainstorm, then or another Ice Fang, then you get to try and dig for a force, if that's better?
So the real question is, he didn't go for it, and I know after talking about it with some people, the reason he didn't go for it was he was scared of Power Blast, so he was waiting for a
Oh,
Veil
okay.
or a Defense Grid or something. So it means it, like you if he saw our hand, obviously he's just putting it on the stack every time, but he doesn't know that. And the way the game played out, we let on Taiga. That's sort of like an indication that we have Blast in our hand, right?
I mean, or it could just be the kind of hand you kept, right? Where you have
Yeah.
two forces, and so the rest of your hand doesn't need to be that solid to justify keeping.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think he read a blast when obviously we didn't have one, but it's good for us that that happened. So
I think maybe part of the issue there is how likely is it that the game goes better for him if you get into this holding pattern where he's trying to find either another threat or I guess enough mana to jump up to 6 to hardcast the Echo and then be able to flash it back, or some kind of protection, which I guess between those categories, that's most of the deck covered. So
yeah,
he's
exactly.
decently likely to get
Yeah,
up towards those.
I
But
don't hate waiting because there's 4 Veil, 4 Grid, mana. Like that's enough that I would be fine waiting. And like we're not killing him. Like we played an Ice Fang, and now I'm tapping my Tiger for Birds. Now the tapping Tiger for Birds, maybe I shouldn't have done it, but I think I just thought if he draws one of his pieces, he's just going to cast the Echo next turn. So developing the mana is better because I want mana post Echo, obviously. Yeah. So Rite of Flame was the draw, obviously, and obviously now he knows that I don't have Blast because like, why would I ever do that if I had Blast? Yeah, we got a sub from Telperion Kadu. Thank you for being here, and thank you to Paraceline. And this is not a very good hand for me to draw off Echo, but we'll see what happens. I'm along for the ride. He's looking at a lot of cards. Brainstorm, Ponder, Shuffle. I'm pretty sure. Yep. And you know what? We didn't die. you you love to see it, I guess. Our own Brainstorm's pretty good, and like now I think I can play it pretty safe. So this Imperial Recruiter represents Collector Oof in a few turns, which is kind of nice.
yeah. So I guess the plan for now is hide the recruiter to maybe protect from discard, or at least not force ourselves to use our veil. Although I guess we would cast veil in response anyway, so
I
that's kind of
think
moot. But
I think what I want to do is just play another Birds, put 2 lands back, crack, and just leave up,
yeah,
Pyro plus Veil, and developing the
okay.
extra mana actually matters because I want to be able to Veil an Abrupt Decay on my Collector Oof. Oh,
Yeah, I
but
think it's crucial to be able to recruit into Oof, play it, and have protection on the same turn.
yep, and that's what I did, I think. Because Oof is just so insane in this matchup if it doesn't get killed. Force, not the best draw, but now it gives me a decision if I should even play the Recruiter this turn. I guess I do.
Is there any argument for just recruiting for a blue card to turn on force? I
Yeah, I
guess,
thought about it, but I think Oof is just better. So I decided to tap out because I really don't
yeah.
think his deck can kill me through an Oof that has Veil backup.
Also, in that spot, because you're not doing anything else with your mana, there would be no reason to
Hmm.
play the Recruiter. You would just pass with Hardcast Force available. So,
Yep.
yeah, I like this line better. And
And now we just beat down for 4 and like
but
uh
Jarvis, our Ballista can't be activated anymore. It's terrible.
it's going to be like a 6 mana 3/3. I don't know what you want from me. It's like a Triskelion that's sad. Yeah, I mean, I guess Grey Shop isn't out, but I'm going to counter any Burning Wish that gets put on the stack, personally. But wait, spot the kill.
Oh, so we can. Oh, we just food chain make a bunch of mana, exile our own oof, and then.
God, you're so smart. I showed this picture to someone else, and they're like, "You have a collector oof out." I'm like, "Not once my walking ballista is in play. I'm not going to have a collector oof out."
It's like, how do you think this food chain thing works exactly?
Yeah, it's kind of goofy that you can just all right. See you later, null rod to kill your opponent. All right. I mean, this game's no longer he. So what actually happened was I talked to Brian after the match. He didn't side in Abrupt Decay for the one-off collector roof in the side because he just thought he could win before that on average most of the time, which I think is a fine approach as well.
The thing is your deck is quite hard to attack from that perspective, where
Yeah.
you have a fast combo that you either have to respect somehow or just try and win before that can happen. You have a bunch of interactive stuff, and then you also have this one bullet you can tutor up that disables most of the deck. So I think his deck already has enough somewhat situational cards and needs enough resources to go off to begin with that you can't really afford to be clunking it up with these mostly dead abrupt decays.
Yeah. And shout out to Alatar for something.
I guess Decay does also break up the food chain combo, so it's good against another
Yeah.
pan as well. But I don't know if that moves the needle to make it worth it.
I think from his perspective, he thinks he can win most of the games by racing rather than by trying to answer the combo or problematic permanents, which I think is a fine approach because if you do that, your deck is more likely to function and not draw like abrupt decays when you need to draw like action spells or mana or stuff like that. Um, let's take 3 minutes to get some water and be back for the next
Sure.
few rounds because we've been here for 50 minutes. So be right back. One sec, y'all, and thanks for being here. All right, I'm back. I'll answer a question from Zach Faden. When I try to learn, my main problem was it is like a clunkier deck than this deck, and the kill requires more slots, and the cards are on average, I think, worse than the cards in Food Chain. Like Walking Bliss is like an incredibly good card, like even to play a fair game, whereas Parasitic Strix or Cavern Harpy are not. I don't know how they're not really magic cards a lot of the time.
I also found when I tried Alluring that letting my opponent play game to for free was
Oh
actually
yeah.
a substantial problem a lot of the time.
That actually came up for me a bunch of times when I tried it off stream as well, and I'm just like, all right, I think I can do better.
Or even Skyclave Apparition now too.
Oh, I didn't even think about that one. Yeah, that's really awkward. So you probably have to play like Teferi 3 if you're gonna play a Lauren, if I had to guess. But I don't want to think about it anymore.
I think the big selling point to Aluren is that it's a 2-card combo rather than a 3-card one.
Sure.
There was Matt Nass actually a few years ago tried this hybrid list. It was Food Chain plus Aluren, where you had
Yeah.
8 recruiters, and I think I think that's a space that's worth at least revisiting or looking at because
Well, the problem with those decks is actually their mana base, I would actually guess.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. Anyways, round 3. Okay, full disclosure, I actually was looking up almost all my opponents before this because I think in a high stakes tournament it behooves you to do this. This opponent only had results from like 2020 and 2019. They were all goblins and Moonstompy, so I determined that all right, based on that, I would just guess Moonstompy in the dark.
Yeah.
Oh, Apparition on Miss Hall Griffin is not very good. That is true.
For sure.
All right. Well, this hand doesn't play Magic, so this hand does play Magic, and actually is like sort of okay versus Moonstompy in a weird sort of way. It's not like the best, but if you find a Force of Will, it's just like incredibly good versus Moonstompy. And I think you either bottom a land or Brainstorm, and I think it's close. I think I ended up with.
Are you on the play here?
Yeah.
So this is actually an interesting choice, I think, where if you think they're Moonstompy and they're going to have Blood Moon plus Magus, is there an argument for leading on Rainforest and expecting just to fetch basic Forest?
I thought about that for a while. The problem is, what if they just have Chalice instead?
Yeah, I guess if they have Chalice, you can crack and find Trop or something and then Brainstorm, but then that's not ideal. So
yeah, I mean, but on 6 cards, I'm not allowed to like try to go to 5 and like for a better hand. I think this is definitely a keep, and the question is, how do you play the hand? I think I ended up bottoming Island or second Brainstorm and playing Island Ponder, just looking for a force or a fast combo.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of close. My opponent also went to 6 because if they're Moonstompy, they're more likely to mold than I am, I think, on average. All right. So, opponent went to 5. Okay. Now I really think they're Moonstompy because I don't know, like, what else could it be if they're going to 5 cards? Kind of interesting. The third land's good, the bolt's okay, and the collateral's decent. So I think I'm supposed to keep. Obviously, if I get Blood Moon, it's all like shit.
Well, if you get Magus though, the lightning bolt actually is pretty nice. So this one is, I think this is actually pretty tricky. Because keeping this is terrible against one half of their draws and is actually pretty close to ideal against the other half of their draws. And I say half not because I think it's 50-50 necessarily, have not done the math, but it's really difficult to hedge against both things at the same time here.
Yeah, so I don't actually remember what I did, so let's see.
Also, if you keep, then you have to think about which order you put the cards in, right?
Chose to shuffle, drew collateral anyway.
Well, Jarvis, did you put the collateral on top with the ponder before you shuffled?
I did, actually. But I didn't draw lightning bolt, which was under the collateral. I drew ponder, so it did shuffle. Checkmate, atheist.
Isn't that the theory though with the ponder bug? Is that it only affects the top card?
I don't care about anyone's theories. I don't want to listen about. Anyways, this brainstorm is actually insanely good. Look at it. It's representing a turn 3 kill now. So I mean, I'm clearly happy. I put like, I don't know, probably the cantrips back.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think.
I don't know. Let's see what I do.
Well, brainstorm. Actually,
I did put the cantrips. Okay. So I'm hedging for Chalice. That's what I'm doing here now. So this all makes sense. Nice card. I say that jokingly, but it is quite funny that my hand like a moment ago could not beat Blood Moon, and now it's completely immune to Blood Moon, right? That I don't know. And now they know they're in trouble.
Even if they have a way to kill the birds, which I think is just exactly like Spirit Guide Chandra or something, they're still dead. Yeah, we go Ice Fang into 3-drop, and then we're good to go.
You mean Shatter Skull Smashing Standard All-Star? This card actually is This card is actually quite good.
I agree.
This deck needs more mana as it is, and having a split card mana / removal spell I think is actually excellent. All right. Is there any way for this to go bad for me when they're tapped out? Not really.
No.
One smart thing to do is you usually do want to float a bunch of mana to just be able to recast it twice in case of something weird happens. Oh, but why do I waste so much time? I don't know. I think I was just clicking. I should have just cast a recruiter first and to show them that I have it. But that's not the interesting part of the game. Oh, the main reason for that card is Chrome Mox. That's really smart too. Because you can't Chrome Mox a mountain. You can Chrome Mox a Shatter Skull Smashing, but also just being, split card, Bolt Land / X red kill something is like kind of nice, right?
I do love the fringe accounting benefits of those cards, where it's like I can Nasa it to find one, but I can also get it Thoughtseize or whatever, and they can Thoughtseize my land drop now. It's a weird trade off.
So I think I decided in Staticaster, Rex Sage. There's one other card. Staticaster, Rex Sage. What the hell's the last card? Let me see if I can find it. Staticaster, Rex Sage.
Force of Negation?
Oh, 2 Force of Negations, yeah.
Yeah.
For Uro, Scavenging Ooze, Ponder. Oh, yeah, let me put the list in CBL, sorry. I'll do that real quick. No, I don't think you want Ufi versus Moonstompy. I think that's like kind of not the thing you want to do.
Yeah, cutting the Ponder is interesting. I think it makes more sense on the draw in the face of Chalice.
Exactly, that's the only reason to do it. On the play, I don't think I would do it.
Okay.
It's like a small thing, but I think sometimes you can get away by not being so exposed to Chalice and winning on bare margins that way.
It might be useful just to have, even in the Chalice games, to have a blue card to pitch to forces. Like, I know that's a joke that people just give that as a benefit, but I think it actually does come up here.
Yeah, I think it's close, but I thought hedging versus Chalice was safer. It's definitely very close. Right here. Right. But there are better pitch cards. I don't know. Yeah, but this game's going to turn out to be really weird. I did not win the PTQ. I'm sorry, but there's always something to learn about talking about matches. What's all right? Updated the CBL just for y'all. All right. Disappointing. Yeah, it is disappointing. I'm not JPA or Nathan Stewart. All right. So I sideboard like this. I normally side out Uro versus Blood Moon decks because it's very difficult to escape it under a Blood Moon. I think this is, a force is just so valuable in the matchup. Even though they kept 7, which is scary, this hand has to be a keep.
Definitely.
And you get to develop an island. I'm just forcing anything. I'm like, oh shit. Oh shit. Look! Chrome Mock Shatter Skull Smashing. I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? They had 2 Chalices for 1 on turn 1? Now my hand is functionally 2 cards. I hear cats. Alright, Dom.
Oh god.
Dom! Why didn't anyone tell me this was gonna happen? Dom! So now I'm just like, oh man, I wish Uro was in my deck so bad because this is literally the best card possible versus Torpor Orb. Do you agree with that?
I do. I don't know how many orbs you can expect them to have in their deck, but...
So the thing is, I knew that some Red Stompy lists were playing it. It's just I forgot that they were likely decided in versus me. And then I analyzed my deck. I'm like, wait, this card's extremely good versus me. Like, obviously they're going to say it. And my guess is 1 or 2, personally.
Mhm.
But I think just the strategic dominance of this over that, it is... For game 3, I should put these back in my deck. Because
Maybe, yeah.
because if they have Blood Moon plus Orb, this is actually one of the easiest ways you can sack out a win.
That makes sense, because otherwise you need to assemble the 3 parts of your food chain combo manually, which is easier said than done.
Yeah, so now I think the game lasts forever because my opponent doesn't actually play a threat for quite a while, but it doesn't really matter because so few cards in my deck do it. Like 1/1 flash for 2. I'm just like, great. So I didn't want to fetch from Mountain to play this recruiter because that's equivalent to playing a 3-mana 1/1 to turn off the ability to play this next turn if I draw another land. I don't think this is worth it. I'll just wait on my 3-mana 1/1 to try to speed up the clock later.
Honestly, I probably would have just got tilted and scooped by now.
Like, no, because like they don't have any creature. Like this might kill it.
Okay, scratch that. Yeah, let's go.
No, the Griffin was pitched to force on turn 1. That's why I didn't want to scoop. Like they weren't doing anything. I'm like, maybe this kills them, you know?
Yeah, 3/3 is actually dummy thick against like the Rebel Master War Boss stuff. Although Chandra
sad. But I always like it to pick it off. But you know. But now I think I'm gonna lose again because like I don't have any Griffins left. And my hand is not very good. This is smart. Chalice for 2, Chalice for 1 is actually pretty good here. I don't think their deck has like 2-drops. But this cuts off Manipulate Fate as an out as well, which is sad. So I don't know. It's pretty hard to win. This is like actually an okay draw. Like if I'm going to draw something, that's like one of my better draws, right?
We can even hardcast it now, yeah.
So here's the funny part. They play Chalice for 2 into Bone Crusher. Clearly they just top deck the Bone Crusher because otherwise you would just cast Stomp first, right?
Yeah.
But I decide that you have to counterspell it. Assassin's Trophy? I've only showed them rug-colored lands. I don't think they can really expect Assassin's Trophy, right? So I really think I'm like actually okay because they're not top decking any threats. The minute that they have a threat, I'm probably dead. Like this is probably good enough on average, right?
Yeah. This is the kind of deck which, if you expect a lot of Moonstompy and the Mystic Forge deck, could support like Force of Vigor or something in the sideboard.
Yep. You could.
But
I would probably. Sorry.
Like for example, the Fairy Macabre in the sideboard. How realistic is it that we actually are going to be able to? Firstly, that we want to pull that in, and secondly, that we're going to have enough time to like recruiter to fetch for it.
I didn't end up cutting it, but I feel like it does enough small things that I want to play it. The one question in my mind was, am I supposed to side that in Euromirrors? I didn't, but I'm now questioning that maybe he had that as a plan. So I don't know. But I don't know. I'm kind of screwed now. Like, it's hard to win from this spot. You can sideboard a Braid if you wanted to, if you expected more Torpor Orbs, actually. But I don't think it's worth it. And now
notably, I'm dead. Seeing Chandra and Khan suggests that this isn't the Basuta version of Red Stompy. So does that tell you anything about what you might expect for Game 3?
No, it just tells me Force of Negation is even better than normal, but it doesn't really change anything.
Yeah. It tells you that, and I think also tells you that because of Khan, their sideboard space is more limited, so there's less that they can do to actually reconfigure their deck in post-board games.
I can't cast Collateral under Chalice for 2, so no. There was still Chalice for 2. Alright, Game 3. So this one gets really weird. Again. Alright, this hand must be a keep, because God, I'm actually hoping they orb me with this hand. In a sick sort of way. Is that sick? This game I actually wanted. Oh, I wanted to get the Uros back in. That's why. But I'm still
So the
hedged
Ponder
for.
is still on the bench.
Yeah, this might have been a mistake. Maybe it would have been better to side out like another collateral and leave in a Ponder. But it's kind of a difficult balancing act.
I think on the play, being able to find a force on turn one maybe is important
Yeah.
enough that you want maximum cantrips.
Okay, why don't you like sideboarding out Manipulate Fate? I would rather have Uro in my deck if they're going to try to Torque Orb. But I don't know, it's kind of close. So sadly, that is not Torque Orb. Yeah, so I just decided to play Food Chain because I think it makes so much sense. And now Disaster Strikes. It's like, oh my god. What's going to happen? I mean, obviously I can't do anything, but... So, I decide, obviously I have to play Coatl. And I decide to cycle my Uro because, like, what else am I doing? Now, this is an interesting draw. Now there's a lot of things you can do.
This is where we kind of wish we had that Hydroid Crisis, right?
Do we? I
I
don't think
guess
we
you.
have time for that. Okay, suppose you tutor for Crisis, they minus go get Lattice, play it. Is that even good? To have Crisis in your hand?
Well, no, I'm thinking you would have Crisis in play this turn.
I see. Okay, maybe
Because you would
that.
go, you exile
Mhm.
Uro, that gets you to 6. Burst taps, that's 7. You exile it up to 9. You recruit it down to 6. Exile recruit up to 10, and then you just Crisis for 8.
Yeah, that works. Now the question is, I don't have that as an option, so it's not really worth thinking about it. But if you have Rex Sage, and what's the other card that would be good to tutor for here? Let's look at that. Rex Sage is definitely like a contender to take here because it kills the Chalice, which means you can brainstorm. But I don't know what you're supposed to do. I mean, we can look at the deck again real quick to decide. Rex Sage, Statcaster doesn't do anything. Ice Fang doesn't do much. I don't know. Like it I think I decided on Rex Sage, but I think there was something else I could have done. And the other question is, do you want to use Uro for mana or not, or do you want to just let it die, right?
So our graveyard at this point, let's see. Skype is kind of cramping my style here.
Okay. Do we need to restart the call?
Oh, I can shrink it, and that somehow makes things bigger. All right. So what do you think are the main options at this point?
So I think there are two main plans. Either you can actually escape Uro this turn if you really want to, but I don't think that wins on average by throwing basically everything in the graveyard. But I think what I wanted to do, and I think what I probably end up doing, is playing Recruiter for Rex Sage to the Chalice, and just cast Brainstorm with mana floating to see what happens.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. But I think I spend a lot of time thinking about that because you see me tapping on tapping lands because I'm just like, god damn it. All right. So now you exile that, and I think I didn't. I think I probably tapped the wrong lands. I think I'm supposed to have like a red sorcerer or something untapped. I don't know. All right. And this is actually quite good because like I think they're so likely to go get Lattice and cast it next turn that forcing it and then bolting their Karn and then escaping Uros just wins the game on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So that brainstorm was basically the nuts. I mean, the second bolt's not great, but like who cares, right?
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time tanking for something that ended up working basically perfectly for me. Here's the other thing. Our opponent hasn't played a single red source this game. I think they're just kind of color screwed. Which can happen in the Moon Stompy deck, funnily enough. So just get this Lattice out of here. Cannot force it fast enough. By the way, you actually get to do a thing. You get to bolt the Karn as well, and play Griffin off of Sage, and then just make enough colored mana to escape Uro that way.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you knew, but obviously, like when I say it out loud, it makes sense, you know. And I know my top card is actually I know my top card's Bolt, so I actually wasted time because normally you do want to keep all mana floating if possible because like the lands untap just in case if you draw something that's not Lightning Bolt. But I know I'm drawing Lightning Bolt, right? And yep, opponent packs it in. So we basically went from being like, oh shit, I'm completely dead to last to like, oh shit, my opponent can never win. in a very quick time frame. I guess that's what Brainstorm's good at doing, right?
Are you one of these people who thinks that Brainstorm isn't good without fetch lands?
I'm excited to just cast Brainstorm for value. By value, I mean no fetch lands.
I mean more that a lot of people with Historic in mind are saying stuff like, oh, well, Brainstorm, you don't have fetches in this format and so on and so forth. And it's like, that doesn't matter. It's still just a completely busted Magic card.
I think what people don't realize is getting the information of what you're going to draw 2 turns in advance right away as well matters quite a bit as well. And also, if we expect Arclight Phoenix to be a thing, which I sort of do, that's like a very natural fit for the deck because first off, you can just brainstorm looting, and that sort of resets it. And second off, you can shuffle if you want to. It like nothing stops you from putting Evolving Wilds or Fabled Passage or Attune with Aether in your deck. So I think it's kind of ridiculous what people say. Like I played a lot with Brainstorm. I do think it's probably put into too many cube decks, but I think it will be quite a good card in Historic.
Yeah.
Brainworm
Brainstorm storing entity is nice.
What? Yeah, that just you built your own get rid of trash cards. I don't know.
The deck I may be most excited for is because we have Time Warp now too, which is also completely messed up. And you have a Tameo Collector of Tales. So you can like brainstorm to rig your Tameo +1, and then or you can Tameo to clear the top of your deck once you put stuff away. So and as Julian mentions, looting and brainstorm is not a combo any more so than like looting and any other cantrip is.
Oh yeah, I'm obviously being a little bit facetious, but if you brainstorm and find the phoenixes, like it's kind of nice to be able to use the looting to dump them. I don't know. I think it is a good card. All right, verse everyone. I'm keeping this hand. Put Mulligan to 6. Underground Sea. All right. I don't know. I'm just kind of looking for anything that's good. All those cards are decent, so you know, not much to think about. I think you just keep them and put the collateral into your hand, or the tag into your hand. I don't know why I did that. I guess I would rather have collateral. And this is like, all right. So I've played my opponent in the past, and they've mostly played fair decks. This made me think that they're not playing a fair deck because this is like kind of unusual for a fair deck to do that right here, right?
Yeah, this to me suggests, Storm deck that is 1 card away from just going off this turn, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. What about Baleful Strix?
Probably not a Storm deck anymore.
It could still technically be Doomsday, but I've played my opponent quite a bit in the past. They've almost never played a combo deck, so I just thought it was actually very unlikely that they were Doomsday. And now the jig is up. Now I'm just like, all right, they're bug, whatever.
Bug 46% deck.
So I didn't force it because I thought I could just put enough pressure on them to not do it, but maybe I should have. I still don't know about that.
If you decided to force, would you Corral first to see if you drew another blue card and reevaluate, or is Ponder enough better than Corral that you would want to just pitch the snake instead?
Well, my top card is Food Chain, right?
Oh, okay, sure, sure.
So like the question is, do you force, and if so, do you push? Which do you pitch? So actually, I think why I didn't was I still had dreams of comboing my opponent this game still. Like because then I would rather
Yeah.
just defend the combo than do that. But that might have been wrong because I think that deck plays a lot of abrupt decays, so it's sort of hard to defend your combo from abrupt decay, right?
That's the thing. It's going to be hard to, if you don't do it this turn, the window closes quite rapidly. If they don't know you're on food chain, which is certainly possible at this stage, then they might just like take the shields down if they have a better play on their own turn.
Yep. Yep. So I just cast this, and I think, yeah, we're just looking for the combo. And look, lo and behold, that is the combo. And, you know, we can just wait and see what they do on their turn.
Was there any consideration to bolting Strix and attacking?
Well, then I shuffle away my Ballista, right?
Well, no, just play Tiger and...
Oh, yeah, there was. But these decks sometimes play Wasteland as well. So I didn't want to do that. Because, like, I want to be able to beat a Daze next turn. I didn't really say that out loud, but I think that's what I was thinking at the time as well.
So you're thinking this is like Bug Delver, maybe?
No, I think it's just bug control, but my opponent, I have seen them play Daze and like more controlling decks as well.
Okay.
So I just kind of think the Strix doesn't matter. There's the waste. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, now I guess I have to. Actually, I don't force it because I think it's actually better to force their force on my food chain. That's why I didn't force it. I guess it sounds kind of crazy, but I think the Jace is on average is not going to find a force of will in 3 cards, right?
Well, if you think the coast is clear this turn, it's a question of if they already have a force, then you don't want to force. If they don't have a force, then Jace would need to find like at least 2 forces to go with 2 blue cards. So yeah, so they force, you force back.
Yeah, I'm obviously doing it.
Yeah.
They have another force. I'm like, okay, now we have to kill the Jace. There's no question, right? But I mean, like they got a 2 from 1 off their Jace, but I think that exchange ended up fine because they used 4 cards basically countering my spells, and I don't know. They're at 10. 10's not a high level, and they're putting Ponder on top. That indicates weakness to me. Like, if you had a stronger hand, you would just put Force of Will on top and just defend your position, right?
Yeah, and this is one spot where Bolt actually does work out better than Source of Plowshares.
Oh yeah, it was much better. And my food chain, I'm actually fine with the food chain being decayed now because it served its purpose, right? It was like the lethal threat on that turn cycle, but you know it didn't happen. And now Ballista looking a lot better than Hydroid Crisis right here, honestly. I guess it's debatable if it's actually better than Hydroid Crisis right here. I think it is. They loamed back a Wasteland. I'm like, oh shit. I'm kind of in the shitter now. It's going to be hard for me to cast a lot of spells this game after with that loam walk. Well, you know what Manipulate Fate is good at doing? Shuffling your deck.
Thinning.
Thinning?
Oh, that was not the answer. Okay.
Well, no, shuffling my
we'll
deck.
go with what you said.
Shuffling my deck for a bad brainstorm. I could have just played the birds there and passed. I don't. It feels like I should just shuffle my deck.
I agree.
Instead, but it's kind of close. And I got a 2-for-1, I guess. I killed their Strix and traded with a Fatal Push. They're probably going to waste me again, and I don't know. I'm kind of hoping I kind of just get to bolt them out at some point, but very unlikely. Question if you should play Birds or Coatl, I guess. I don't think it's actually pretty close. I think you should just play Birds so you can play and try to get the Uro online, you know? They're looking at a lot of cards, but they keep shuffling, and now they cannot draw any extra cards, so I'm thrilled about that. And, yeah, they have Stifle. I don't know. I guess I got. I question if this Stifle is even that bad for me, is the actual reality, right? It's bad, but it's not, like, game-losing bad, right? Well, now things look worse.
That deck over there is a real a motley crew.
I really don't like these bug decks. I just think there's such clunker mobiles that they, like, my opponents played a lot of spells, but have they actually done anything? Like, kind of feels like they've just been trying to constrain me to no resources, and then they'll lose if I draw lands, right?
Yeah, I like the bug decks that feel like they're building towards something, whether it's really going hard on Uro, or you could have some other thing like a Zenith package or Natural Order, whatever it is, like an ability to actually turn the corner properly versus just spinning your tires with a bunch of this stuff.
I mean, I think they do have a bunch of Uros in their deck, actually, to be quite fair. I think they probably have like 3 Uros. I mean, whether or not that should be 4, I guess, is the actual question, right? My opponent's at 1. And look at this. They've already used 1, 2, 3 Force of Wills. So I think it's pretty likely my Force on their Uro just kills them with the Ice Fang. And, I don't know. I have 2 lands in play on turn 11. My opponent's dead to an Ice Fang. I think they took like 18 damage, or they took some ridiculous amount of damage off of this Sylvan and didn't get to Uro enough. So,
can we restart the call briefly before we move to game 2?
Sure.
Because the screen sharing is kind of out of whack. But...
All right. Do. Oh, it didn't. This Skype music didn't go that long this time. Oh yeah, the 4th Force Will is also not castable because they're at 1 life, which was the funniest part. So I knew I was pretty good, and they can't cast Fawn on their turn. So, what round was that? 4. All right, game 2 now. We've tried other services. The audio's been like kind of bad on other calls. I don't know why. So yeah, I think Relic is excellent versus my opponent, and we saw that in the first game. Like, look at the cards that they cast. Cast Life from the Loam and Uro, and I'm just like, I can't think of a better card than Relic versus them. So, I'm just keeping. This is like a slow hand, but I don't need to go fast versus my opponent. Actually, how did I sideboard? I said 2 food chains, and a Ballista, and a Force, and 3
bolts, 2 birds.
2 birds. Right? Kind of a motley crew, but the thing is, I think versus that deck, if you draw too many Birds of Paradise, it's kind of a liability. And I think Lightning Bolt's not that good versus them, but it's like good to keep 1 to keep them honest versus like a Jason Mind Sculptor or whatever.
Yeah, Birds kind of sucks against them because we've seen they have stuff like Plague Engineer, and also we can't really kill them that quickly. So you'll get to a bunch of spots where the Bird just isn't doing that much for you. It is kind of funny that we're on the Uro plan, but we also have the 1 Magus in our deck just to cheese them out sometimes. But yeah, I think that's a good plan.
You looked at their mana rates. They literally didn't fetch a basic. Yeah. So if you Magus them at any point when they're like tapped out, they just lose on the spot.
Why jump through a bunch of hoops when you can just KO them, right?
Yeah, I like my easy wins. Got to get that Delta out of there. And they're doing it again! I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. I really don't. They did it in game 1, and I thought they were unfair deck. And it turned out they played like a turn 11 game where they were a fair deck. And look, this is how good Relic is.
Yeah, you gotta do it.
Yeah, you gotta do it.
And what are you hoping to find with this ponder here?
I don't know, any cards that have text. Those cards all have text, so I just keep them. Like this is a matchup where if you trade everything off, it'll slightly work out for me on average. So I think that's why I just keep any ponder here, you know? Like I'm definitely keeping this ponder. I guess if I saw 3 lands, it would be bad, but basically any cards are good. So I just want to build towards an Uro or something, you know?
Why does that mean you're more likely to keep random stuff though? Especially when you have brainstorm, where if let's say you find a mediocre ponder, you shuffle and then you whiff, so to speak. You still have the brainstorm to kind of fix your draws afterwards.
Yeah, I guess that's true. What I mean specifically with this one is I think Ooze is actually pretty good versus them, and having the force on this turn cycle is a nice safety valve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I probably wait. Oh, that's not the button I want to click. I clicked on the I clicked any order, except that doesn't actually do anything in the replay. But it actually might have caused the replay to crash if I because it's MTGO. Oh, and this is one of the cards I probably do have to force on average. You know, we can't have that nonsense happening, right? All right, and we got a plan, y'all. We got a backup plan for their Uro as well, which is nice. So I just put 2 lands back. And I think I played the Ooze because I think it's just I'm gonna use all my mana Uroing the next few turn cycles. That I think is just correct, if that makes sense.
And you have to be thrilled to see them use what I would call a premium removal spell just on random stuff because they have to, right?
I mean, Ooze is so insane versus their deck. I don't think they're allowed to let it live, right?
Yeah, I mean they have to do it. It's just fun that you get to play these cards that just have so much relevant text against them.
Advantage of having red is like obviously key here. And also, if they force, the way that they played game one, I think they're just so likely to brainstorm. And this is the one bolt we left to keep them honest. You love to see it, right? Toski looks so bad. I don't know. It's just like I didn't even really consider playing it for more. I played in that one league I streamed, and then like after that, I'm like, this card sucks. All right, so we're in a good fashioned Euro war, but I'm like 2 steps ahead, right? So I'm way ahead.
Yeah, you get the first attack, which you love to see, and
I can play a ballista, which is like another threat, or I can like ponder. I can ponder for a Veil of Summer, which means that they can't just like decay my thing to get back in it. And I get to play a big bull. I get to play a ballista for 2 this turn. Now, here's the thing: ballista for 2 this turn is very suspicious, right?
oh, it's super sus. Yeah.
But I mean, what can I do? I have to play it this way, right?
I think so, and
yeah,
it's it is so nice that Uro clocking them both decreases the effectiveness of their Sylvan library, and even if they resolve Uro this turn, you get the first attack back, and it's kind of tough for them at that point. Where if they trade, then you get to recast your Uro first, and so you draw another card, and you just put them in a really tough spot.
Yeah, basically, for those of you who haven't played Uro mirrors in any format, whoever gets to Uro first is actually favored to like just run away with the game because they can just keep doing it, or their opponent has to keep blocking. Like blocking is not what you want to do versus Uro because you don't get the card in the attack. And this relic is like I don't really care. Like, and I'm gonna just put the screws to them. So I brainstorm right there in case I found Pyroblast because just like getting the damage through I think matters quite a bit. It's a tempo game now, not a combo game, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, but the disadvantage of that is what if they wasteland my thing first, right, Leviathan?
On that turn, is there a case for maybe just letting them trade if they want to, and then you can escape your Uro, and then if they try to escape theirs, you Pyroblast it at that point.
Thought about it, but what if they just like randomly drew like Surgical or something weird? I don't know. Like I don't like taking a risk right there.
Right.
And like here, what's going to happen is I think they're forced to trade inside combat and then relic both of us inside combat, which is like pretty good for me, frankly. No, I don't pump Ballista here. I think pumping Ballista is asking for a lot of problems. I would rather just diversify a threat. And when it rains, it's actually possible I shouldn't have even cast the Ponder pre-combat, because if I expect both graveyards to get relicked, I should just attack, force the trade, and then get the relic off, then Ponder to put more cards in the graveyard for Uro, right?
I agree, and I think there aren't that many cards that you would want to find pre-combat necessarily, and even if you draw a Pyroblast, you're going to be in great shape either way, right? You don't necessarily need to pull the trigger pre-combat.
So Veil now means I'm safe to just attack with all, because suppose they didn't block this and they blocked that, they would take 6, 7, 8, 9 from the Ballista pings. So now they have to block the Uro. So I get to attack with everything for free.
The funny thing is too, is that because they don't have Snowlands, you don't have to worry about them being like a random Ice Fang deck themselves.
Yeah, exactly. The bluffing equity giving it all away. And yeah, they welcome me inside of combat, which is obviously what you have to do. But I still think I'm really far ahead, obviously. I think that's an easy... Oh, I don't shuffle? Oh, weird. Oh, I guess this sort of makes sense. Force phenomenal pickup. Now they're just... I think now they're just dead. I know their top card is Abrupt Decay from Sanctuary. I don't think their Uro matters. Like, that matters though. We can't let them have a Scavenging Ooze of their own. But I think now this turn I pumped twice. They've used a Fatal Push. I think it's pretty safe to just pump and see if they're dead.
Yeah.
Especially since I only have to pump once. Wait, 3, 4, 5. I guess I would have had to pump again.
You would have to pump again, but I guess you can wait on the second pump until post combat.
Yeah. So I think it's relatively safe. Anyways.
Yeah.
All right, round 5. All right. This person is Kai Sawatari. They play a lot of Magic in Japan. I know recently they've been playing Doomsday, so I just assumed they'd be Doomsday again. So, good to know. And
yeah, they almost qualified during the Valky week, right? Where like everyone was on Valky, and Doomsday was... I can imagine that being just like an incredible choice for that tournament. But
anyways, this hand is not good versus anyone, so this hand's like fine.
Yeah.
It's not exciting, like, obviously, but
you would like to have a force, but you have a lot of looks at it, and you also have outs towards a quick combo, so can't complain too hard. I mean, I guess you can always complain, but...
And here's a force! And a land on top is actually pretty nice as well, because the third land is decent.
Yeah, you kind of want to stop at exactly 3 lands here, right? So it's nice that we get to shuffle this away and then go looking again.
And
now, again, do you consider Ice Fang over Ponder here?
I think I should have more.
Second force would be ideal. And like maybe if you find a bird or something, you can play that instead. At the same time, I think setting up the, if you draw Recruiter or something lines, then that might be worth just taking the chance on Ice Fang instead.
Yeah, maybe I should have. I don't know. I should have thought about it longer, I guess, and I didn't. I think there's... So there's a temptation to force this, and then at the end of the day, you just realize, like, this card doesn't really do that much, so you should just let it go. I'm like being a little bit facetious, but I think forcing this is like pretty wrong. I don't know how to explain it besides that.
I guess the argument would be that it's kind of the same thing with the Wish Claw against Bryant,
Uh
right?
huh.
Where if they need protection, they can find protection. If they need action, they can find action. And the issue is if this lets them find protection to go with that action, or vice versa, then they can maybe punch through um, your interaction. But when you have two forces, I think letting them go down a card and then just picking that fight with them anyway is still worth it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's see what happens. So they pay. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, it didn't show up in the chat. But they actually paid 1 life, so that means they went through 10 cards essentially. All right, and I'm like, okay, great. We'll force this Doomsday. They force back, and I'm like, okay, I guess it's a good thing that I found another force. That force is not so good. And I believe the card underneath of it was not very good either, so I just shuffle. Now Recruiter is the best draw possible, isn't it? But, you know, we got to miss Hologriffin, I guess. Get some beatdowns on.
It clocks them fast enough that in a turn or two, they may not be able to Doomsday safely, but um,
Well,
they can sure do it now.
all right. So one thing, the thing I hate about playing against this deck is you can hypothetically figure out what their pile is if you know their deck list and you look at every card and write it down. I don't know about you, but that seems like too much work to me.
When you're 4-0 in a PTQ, I think you know that's a motivation enough. But
Yeah, I don't know. This was so weird. All right, so Cetrus finds it fun. He's a monster. Birds is a bad draw, but you know what? I decide not to play for bluffing. Then I'm like, wait. Then a turn later, I'm like, wait. I'll probably regret that. So I don't know. Also, always give your Miss Hall-Griffin vigilance. I should have played my birds. It's ridiculous not to. All right, they pass the turn. I'm like, what the hell is going on? What? I don't know. I still don't understand what happened. I don't know how I got 2 turns after a Doomsday, right? Was it 2 or was it just... No, it was 2, right?
They were on to...
Oh, he
They went
misclicked the pile.
They went
Okay.
16 down to 8. You attack down to 5, and then you get another turn. So
Yeah, I don't know. I think we were supposed to be dead. Oh, the answer is someone was in Discord with him. He misclicked the pile. Okay, that's a much more
brutal.
reasonable explanation for what happened. All right, you know, shit happens. That doesn't make Kai a bad player. It's like Doomsday is a deck that if you misclick, you lose. I think so. You know, we're all human. How did I sideboard? Bolts came out. Manipulate Fates came out. Scavenging Ooze and 1 Uro came out. I sided in all of my blasts, my veils, and Magus of the Moon, I believe, is actually quite good in the matchup.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
Their mana base is mostly Underground Seas, so it's just like if they cast Doomsday and you cast Magus, there's a chance that they're completely dead to it. I think.
Is there a case for Collect Roof? Do you think?
I don't think so.
No.
I've had this discussion. I don't think it's. You could make a case for that over Uro, but I think the blue card count for Uro also matters. I don't know. It's like kind of close. Wait, why is there a Carpet of Flowers in my deck?
Oh, that should that's just sneak in there. Yeah.
I think I misclicked then at some point. All right, misclicks all around. But you know, this hand's great. This is like, it's not quite the nuts, but it's very good versus Doomsday. I think.
You could even set up just like a turn 3 Magus line potentially as well.
No, that's my plan currently. But obviously, anything could happen. Yeah, I'm playing Forest there. I don't know. Just
Land not an ideal draw, but I guess at this point we're just hoping we have enough time to get something together. And you have to be terrified when that Underground Sea immediately taps there, but thankfully it's just a preordain.
And I drew Brainstorm, which is like basically the best. And look at this. this is big brain because they know my hand. They know Brainstorm is functionally an Ancestral Recall, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that's a spot where I think forcing Brainstorm actually is very good.
yep. Especially when you have Doomsday lined up for the next turn. I'm just like, well, shit, we're probably dead again.
I mean, if you have the Doomsday lined up already, then it's pretty easy to do that.
Yeah.
Because you know, even if you like Ice Fang into Force, you don't have the blue card left over.
Right.
So at that point, it's a more obvious line.
However,
But
these pair of draws I think are absurd. Okay, so one thing that can happen and is that they often try to Cavern Oracle, especially versus I don't know, just generally versus Forceful, but you can destroy it with the trigger on the stack sometimes, and they might lose to that. But also the Fawn just preventing a draw spell next turn, I think, is quite good as well.
yeah.
And look, they didn't crack the fetch beforehand. That means you know they put at least one land into their pile. So you can deduce that. And I think we determined that it was Cavern Oracle, a fetchable, and we concluded that Daze was in their hand as the last card because there were only 3 Dazes here, and it made sense for Daze to be their last card there. So most of the cards were accounted for. So like finding these was pretty good.
Yeah, you would love to be able to recruit for Magus and kind of put them in check, where if you do that, unless they put the right mix of, Basic Island, LED, and so on in the pile, there's a good chance they just don't get to cast that Oracle, and you can lock them out. However, once you deduce that they have Daze, that means that your Pyroblast is kind of ineffective at that point. So I don't know if you can afford to take the shields down.
I think you just have to say go and attack for 1.
Yeah. It may be the position where you just hope to like survive this turn and then just draw Food Chain or draw Magus naturally.
Wait, Moto bugged out. They cast Ideas Unbound that turn, but it didn't show up. And I ended up fawning it. I don't know what happened. I guess the replay is just broken now. I cast Recruiter for Magus.
That's bizarre.
Okay, I don't know. Moto broke. I distinctly remember casting Fawn on the Ideas Unbound that turn. They cast Thassa's Oracle. I Pyroblasted it and they conceded.
Yeah.
So my hand is actually Ponder Magus. What the fuck?
Okay.
Why did it crash like that? That's so weird. I don't know. Like, so they have 3 cards left in deck. They fetched down to 2, and they cast Thassa's Oracle because it would be lethal, and I Pyroblasted it. So really weird that it decided then to crash, but So 5-0 feeling pretty good, but then bad things start to happen. All right, Killer SUV. I saw them playing Artifact Storm on someone's stream at some point, so I just assumed that they were on it still because it was kind of the hot deck of the moment.
And it makes sense because it's a tap untap combo deck, so very on brand for them too.
So given I know that that's the matchup, I think this hand is not good enough. Like a Force of Will is just so much more important versus that style of deck than a medium combo hand.
Yeah.
This is like fine, but not exciting. Like this is keep and lose probably territory, which is fine. I don't know. I think I kept and bottomed the ooze probably. Yeah. Defense grid, Mox. All right, well, I found a Force of Will, but it's not good. Kind of hard to win here.
Yeah, you're getting another turn, but you can't do anything with it, so...
And I actually left up Force, but they played another grid, so it means I have to force the grid. Because I had exactly 3 mana to pay for one thing, and... Fortunately, this matchup is very fast, one or the other. Like, someone is dead by turn 3 or whatever every game. the sad thing is, Karn is probably good enough to buy a bunch of turns versus my combo that like it really doesn't matter what they do.
That's why you need the Krasis, Travis.
Uh, not really, but sure. All right, so I mean, obviously that game was a massacre, but it's because I mulliganed and didn't have force in my opening hand. You know, like, and like that's the only thing that really matters in the matchup. That or a fast kill, but like I think the problem with trying to kill them fast is my kill is so much slower than theirs on average, right?
Yeah. So in terms of sideboarding, obviously Oof comes in,
Yep.
Sage comes in.
I set out 2 bolts, an ooze, and 2 arrows. And I think I cited in Magus of the Moon as well, because I think just free rolling their soul lands is like actually pretty good. And I gained 2 more force negations, which is kind of nice as well. So
yeah, so this hand is kind of the nuts for this matchup.
I think someone posted that they thought the deck was good. I played it for a stream, and then other people played it. Is why it's back. I don't know.
I think the origin was that Joe Lissette tried an initial list, and then Casey Lancaster picked it up, changed a few things, and was talking about how good it was. Then you tried it, a bunch of other streamers tried it, and then it becomes one of those like self-perpetuating cycles, right? Where you play against it in a league and you get completely demolished, and you think, "Oh, holy shit, I should try this myself," and then suddenly it's everywhere.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I tried it for a bit. I was like, this is powerful, but I don't think it holds up under scrutiny if people want to beat it. Like, Null Rod is basically unbeatable. You have to play some really bad cards for it. I think the issue is it has the Dredge phenomenon or like the Affinity phenomenon, whereas if it's hard targeted, it really will not do that great.
If you just cared about maximizing your chance for this tournament, posting that list was a gigantic mistake because if it's even just a case of the Delver deck start playing null rods in their sideboard again, then it's catastrophic for you.
So funny you say that. I basically just never cut null rod from my sideboard in Delver, period, because I always think there's enough decks that it affects that it's good, and then that deck is just a casualty of my philosophy in the format, right? Like, null rod is good versus Vile decks, it's good versus LED decks, so it's just like, I don't know.
For a lot of the time, yeah.
And
I don't like often the role that Delver plays in the format, but if Delver weren't there, then you would be playing against a lot more like random turn 1 bullshit combo decks, so you pick your poison, I suppose.
Charbelcher. Alright, anyways, this is obviously a great hand in the matchup. Like, remember when I was talking about how forces are the most important cards? Well, this hand has a lot of them. Did the replay break? Alright, I'm gonna close and open MTGO because it looks like the replay broke. Was it me? I guess it was me.
Yeah, I think it just froze for a bit, so I just dropped the call and came back again.
Oh, that was weird. All right, so still recording, thankfully.
I'm assuming on that second game.
I didn't actually click through it because it stopped responding. Then I looked at my internet and I looked like something was weird, so I went back. Huh. My CPU usage is really high. One sec.
Is that just Modo gobbling up memory, do you think?
I'm not sure. Let me... Okay. I think it's fine now, but obviously that was...
Yeah, Zach Faden, I don't think it really is a descendant of the Urza deck. I think it's more that there was a 4 deck that briefly was all the rage last year, and now people have updated that, whereas the Urza deck is still very much a blue deck. You have Urza, Hull Breacher, and on Narset, Emery, Echo, and so that's reflected in the mana base. Whereas this deck is basically just all colorless lands, and then you get to free roll Echo off LED, and then maybe Mox Opal and Lotus Petal on occasion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it seems like we're back. Yeah, I actually called that deck when I streamed it Turbo Mystic Forge because it's definitely a Mystic Forge deck. It's like the best card in the deck. I'll show you what happens in game two. I do end up winning, spoiler, but it's hard to, like, this hand's just so good versus that deck that it's like kind of hard not to win. So, okay, actually, let me unpack this. They played a Petal and a Crystal Vein to play Basalt Monolith. So I'm like, okay, they need this to start their like Voltaic key. So if I force this, it shuts off all of their keys and they're left with no mana. So I think forcing it is just correct.
Yeah, it means you don't care about orb, you don't care about any key,
Yeah.
and so monolith, excuse me, is not a threat by itself, but it makes enough other cards relevant that I think forcing it here actually is the line.
Right.
And yeah, Zach, I think that the Zerda decks are a better comparison point there, like the non-Savages Zerda deck.
Is this where I say someone get an ambulance, but not for me, Mimi?
Oh Lord.
I mean, I think my
Hold on,
packs.
Jarvis, did you just say Mimi?
Look, I wanted to see if you would notice that too. We have such good times together, Dom.
Does that seem like an early scoop to you? Like, you don't really have anything left either.
They have 0 cards in hand.
Well, sure, but like, what if their next two draws are just LED Echo or something?
I don't know. Anyways, that was game 2. All right. Well, this is not keepable in the matchup. They go to 6. I go to 6. All right. On 6, do you keep?
I keep, but I'm not thrilled about it.
Yeah, I keep in bottom bolt personally.
Yeah,
but
I think that's an easy call. It's really sad that this is a matchup where that 7 isn't keepable, right? You have like natural combo lined up, good mana, but just not even in the ballpark of keepable.
Second force is such a dagger. Obviously, I have to force that, and now I'm just they only have 1 card, so. Remember when I decided to side out all my Uros instead of lightning bolts? If that bolt had been an Uro, I think I'm actually better off. But is what it is.
As in, you would put Recruiter back, keep the Uro instead, and then
Well, it also would be a blue card for it. Whoops! I'm like, oh great, I drew a land, I can cast my thing. I'm like, wait, I can't.
Are you tapping untapping, Jarvis?
By accident, yeah.
Okay, sure. By accident.
Wow. You calling me out?
Oh, now they get to Fair for Forge, and this is.
I got 1 turn, but it doesn't do anything. Oh, like I'm basically mega dead by this point, but all right, and now this is the actual infinite. So Basalt Monolith, Mesorb, Mystic Forge. For those of you who don't know, if there's a bad card on top, you can just tap and untap your Monolith to clear the top card because of Mesorb. So they're never going to draw, like, they'll basically get to do whatever they want, and I'll die that turn. It'll just take like 5 more minutes, and I'd rather go do something else. All right, round 7. We play against Alicia _. I looked up. This person has basically no results, period. So blind, I would just guess Rug, but obviously it could be anything.
It is always intriguing when you look at someone's Goldfish page and they just have like Pauper results from 2014 and that's it. And it's like, well, okay, what am I meant to do with that information?
I don't know. I guess the answer is like not much, but anyways, my hand was fine. Obviously, I'm keeping and. There's like a small amount of merit to just like fetching main phase to play around Stifle, but now I get rewarded. Notice that this lightning bolt can actually kill a Tarmogoyf. If I had fetched, it wouldn't be able to because it would be a 3/4. So it paid off. They force, and me drawing the Griffin means I get to force back without feeling bad, which is kind of nice.
Oh, that's really nice, yeah.
Yeah. And now I get to fetch around Stifle because like there's like a small chance that they have Stifle, and I do need that blue source. This is bad, obviously. Like, just recruiter goes back and probably a second recruiter. I don't know. Like, you have to redraw one of them anyways.
Yeah, this gives you the ability to hold up bolt and the most choices over what to pitch.
They ponder shuffled, so like I'm not getting killed, which is the nice part of all of this, right?
I don't know how I feel about that force.
I feel fine about it because my top one card is bad. Like
yeah,
it not having lands bad, and I think really the way I lose this game is if they like draw a bunch of running threats in a row and I'm not doing anything. So I think forcing through my ponder actually matters quite a bit.
Or I guess also if you don't force him and get wasted, it's pretty terrible. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm scared of Wasteland too. Like, there's just so many things that can go wrong that I think trying to do this makes sense. And that is a bad ponder, and that is a good land to find. And the problem with Manipulate Fate is days. We have not given them a window for days effectively, right? This is going to work out super well for me though. Because why wouldn't you max out level it when you have nothing else going on, right?
Exactly. And we get to, I mean, even the land is a kind of a nice draw. Just get to chain around days.
Yeah, well, if I played around days before, I should keep playing around days, right?
Yeah.
Let me. Okay, yeah, they don't have anything, so I'm just going to close it out because that is not the interesting part of the game. All right. So how did I sideboard versus Rogue? I think I took out one Food Chain, one Ballista, two Manipulate Fate, and two Force of Will in a similar fashion as before. I think I'm pretty happy with that plan, frankly. Like,
so you get the Pyroblast and the Uros, and is there anything else?
The Relic of Bergenis.
Oh, sure.
I'm not sure about the Relic, but I think with a lot of the other Rug Delver decks having Uro, it's probably correct to have it.
I think it's nice. I mean, firstly against Uro, secondly to keep Tarmogoyf in range of Lightning Bolt sometimes, and then also if they are on a list with Mandrills, then Relic can help to check that occasionally.
Yep. So it does enough that it's probably good. I mean, this problem is okay. Let me phrase it better. This hand is probably a keep, but also very likely to lose. But I think you're supposed to keep it. Which might be a structural problem with Food Chain, right?
Yeah, I think this goes back to what I was saying with some of our previous hands, where like this hand could very easily just collapse on itself, but also we kind of are priced into keeping because why are we playing this deck otherwise, right?
Right, exactly. All right, so I think I end up keeping it. Like, the problem is, like, you get to develop your mana well, and that's like one of the key points in the matchup, right? Obviously, it could go south, but Brainstorm, a phenomenal draw. Like, now I feel so much better about my hand, obviously, right?
And you almost actively want this burst to get bolted, right?
I mean, sort of and sort of not. Like, it's kind of important. I don't know. All right. Hex Shrinker, not tapping it, screams the loudest Pyroblast in the world to me, personally. I mean, you can't cast the Brainstorm here for that reason. So I think I just go land, go, and the plan is to cast Collateral on their turn to try to block.
If you're doing that, is it worth casting it in response to that Brainstorm?
I think the answer is yes, and I didn't, and I think that was just wrong. So, good discussion, right? Yeah, I mean, I suspected they had Blast. I think they probably had it the entire time, but if they did draw it off the Brainstorm off a bluff, then it ended poorly for me, right?
That's basically it, Single Mo. It's just hard to find a spot to veil through a spell that doesn't also open you up to days again. And stuff like it kind of sucks that veiling a Pyroblast doesn't let you draw a card, so it's pretty weak at, when that situation comes up too. It's just, it can be good, but it's also just more awkward than it appears most of the time.
The one last thing is, like I said before, in this matchup, I don't necessarily need to combo. I think Veil is better for protecting your combo than playing a fair game, especially versus this matchup specifically. So that's why I don't really Veil versus Rug. I could have played the Ballista for one last turn, but like again, I didn't give them a window to daze really. So now, like if I did that, it would have given them a window to daze, and I probably like this is like the only card that matters to me right now. You know.
We also don't have a Griffin in exile, right?
Right.
So it's kind of bad if we have to spend our Ballista and then, now Food Chain doesn't actually get the job done.
But now Food Chain gets the job done if everything resolves. Unfortunately, it didn't
Not
resolve.
optimistic about that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course not. But the Ballista's still nice to squeak in here because it gets to kill the Hex Drinker. Alright, for those of you who are wondering at home, blocking is better than trying to shoot it because of exactly Stifle. Just let the trade happen. Don't do something like try to shoot it, because if you get Stifled, it'll be your real feel bad.
And there's no reason to try to shoot instead, right? When you only have one counter.
Yeah, and here's where I'm like, all right, I'm probably dead, but maybe I can block and like find something weird and chain through. When I think I'm supposed to get Ice Fang here,
yes,
or Scavenging Ooze. Ice Fang or Ooze are the reasonable takes.
Yeah, so I think let's see, we have Birds, Ice Fang, Hex Drinker. The issue with Scavenging Ooze is that it doesn't actually outrace the Delver as it stands right now, right? And then, so we need more stuff to help stitch that together. Mm-hmm. That being said, Ice Fang obviously works against Pyroblast if they have another one of those. And, if they have a bolt, they can still just bolt it down and keep going. So maybe Ooze is better there. What do you think?
I think I ended up on Ooze because of also the Pyroblast thing, but I don't... Well, let's find out what actually happens. Oh, wait. Wrong button. Alright, I did take Ooze. And I played it because my plan is to block and then use the green off birds to eat with Ooze.
Your plan is to Ooze the green?
Yeah. Ooze the green. And like that bolt is basically... The bolt was basically impossible for me to beat like on that creature. I was trying to play around it, targeting my face, but now I think I'm basically dead.
I don't know if the bolt is impossible to beat if it's collateral, because then you get another card back, and then if one of those is even just like a Griffin or something, then maybe that helps to stabilize, but they kind of have it all here.
Yeah. And look, there's Uro. There's Ice Fang. There's Red Elemental Blast that probably was in their hand the entire time. So game 3. All right.
Single Mo, I could imagine an Infect list that has Stifle and Berserk at the same time.
Didn't Tom Ross do that forever?
I was going to say, I think I've seen like lists that exactly had that. Yeah.
So I think I changed my mind about one. What did I do? I set out a recruiter for... I'm trying to remember what happened. There's a recruiter out of my deck for something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Recruiter's not the best in this matchup anyways, because it's kind of a clunker. Like, imagine attaching 3 mana to all of your any spell versus Delver deck. It's not, and then you can see why like you might not want to have all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is Sneak and Show Digital Sloth. I'm not even joking. JPA like crushed the PTQ at Sneak and Show. Oh, I cut the third recruiter for the second Ballista, which I think actually does make sense.
Yeah, just on the play, being able to snipe a Delver. Sure.
Yep. This hand's great. Carpet's just so insane in the matchup that I think you're supposed to keep this hand.
Agreed.
And the way you play this hand is fetch for forest, play carpet. So here, if they waste me, like obviously it's not great, but I think it works out fine generally.
Yeah.
They fetch Taiga.
Sure.
I found that amusing, but it's like kind of whatever. So yeah, like so I main phase it because I can't daze because it's a Taiga. So
And can't Pyroblast again. Yeah.
right. Mountain is actually an excellent draw, and now I'm just gonna sit here and see what they do.
Was there no consideration to just playing the birds?
There was a small consideration, but I wanted to play around Spell Pierce for my Lightning Bolt in case that happened because they showed us Spell Pierce in game one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think I need to develop the birds this turn. And wow, they force it. I'm like, I'm kind of thrilled about it, but I'm also kind of terrified that this is going to kill me now. And the Cindervines can go after my carpet as well.
Yeah. So you really want to either put those Cindervines the carpet and then be able to combo, or I guess find Uro.
Well, this doesn't really hose your combo, right? I mean, it kills your food chain, but that's all it does.
Well, sure. That's what I mean. I think
Okay,
that's
sure.
that's going to be enough.
Right. This smells like a Blastian, or they're killing my carpet upkeep. Alright, it was kill my carpet upkeep. So now, really the card I'm hoping for is really Uro. Like, Uro or combo are what I'm hoping for, but I think Uro would actually be better on average on this board state. Like, basically on this turn cycle, but with this Ponder, I think you have to keep the land and probably keep the Griffin. I'm not thrilled about the Blast right now.
This is where we really wish we had that birds in play still, right?
Yeah, you're right. Well, wait. Oh, because then you just play Food Chain and play
Yeah.
a land? I don't know. So I think I end up keep... Wait, I shuffled? Oh, that kind of makes sense too. Those don't really do that much, right?
If you think you need to find Uro or another removal spell to stabilize here, then yeah, you got to shuffle. Although if we're doing that, then maybe we have to. I guess our blue mana's constrained too. Another issue with not having the birds in play.
Yeah, I should have played that. Maybe I should have played birds on that one cycle. I'm not attacking because they have to get to level 8 to attack past that. So now I cannot remove the Hex Drinker with how my deck is configured. So now it's kind of, well, man, why am I clicking that Brainstorm? Maybe I think having the Griffin in hand. So hypothetically, if I get lucky, I can kill them next turn, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm thinking about. So what do you put back is the question, and what do you play this turn? You probably put back Brainstorm, Collateral, just play Food Chain, say go. And then you untap Collateral, then cast Brainstorm, and everything's reset, right?
Sure.
So I think that's probably what I end up doing. Yeah, okay. Past me thought that, and now me also thinks that that's correct. So it's probably just fine to do that no matter what. All right, now we got mini Progenitors to deal with. Will I be able to
have this turn and then maybe one? Yeah, we're gonna have one more turn, but
yeah. Bad. These don't like. There are actually no there's one creature in the graveyard, but I don't think this is going to do it on average, and this is clearly bad as well.
No, because they're dealing damage in chunks of 6. So
yeah.
Unless you can get above 12, which you can't, and then even then you actually need to kill them in the meantime, which is easier said than done. So yeah, you put back Chain, Ooze, and then Crack Ponder.
I think so. Because I'm still in the situation if I find Recruiter or Blissed, I win.
Or Uro even, right?
So this Might have been the third recruiter. But, I think Relic is good enough in this matchup that you can't really afford it. Now the question is, do you keep this and hope to brainstorm and do your thing next turn?
So let's math this out. So if we, one line could be to play Relic, and then hope to crack to dig one deeper, but then that actually makes Days live on this turn cycle.
Yep.
Which is not ideal. So let's take that out of the equation for now. If we keep, then we get to see 2 new cards next turn, versus if we shuffle, then it's new card plus new card from our draw set next turn. So we should shuffle, right?
Yeah, I think so. But it's kind of close, mostly because the brainstorm does dig 2 more cards on the next turn cycle, right?
One issue is that Uro is actually good but time sensitive, where
Yep.
we're currently at 9. If they hit us down to 3, even if we find Uro, then it gains 3, gains 3 again, potentially gains 3 again. If that only sends us back up to 12, that doesn't actually buy us a turn, right?
Right.
So and we have 3 Uros in our deck. I think with that in mind, because that gives us extra outs that are relevant on exactly this turn, I think you do have to shuffle.
Yeah. I think I end up keeping, but I now believe it was not correct. Yeah, I chose to keep. They had a braid in hand for my bop. I don't know.
I'm kind of surprised to see that in their deck. I guess if they've seen Relic, then it maybe
They
makes
haven't
sense.
seen Relic, though.
Uh,
Alright, so you have to lead with Relic. And now you have to Hail Mary Brainstorm. Sag.
yeah.
What that's
I think also keeping that, it opens you up to, because they were tabbed out before.
Yeah.
It opens you up to weird combinations like double Pyroblast or something, where
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I
don't
think
know.
you have to send it back.
Yep. And good beats. So
And yeah, Zach also makes the point that Cycle Relic means you can't actually develop a even if you do find it later on.
Right.
So
Right. Well, sadly to lose. I think that the reason we played Food Chain was I think generally that matchup is actually decent for the way our Food Chain deck is configured. Obviously, it's not a slam dunk. You can still lose the matchup, but I feel slightly favored, is how I would put it.
yeah, it's kind of a weird situation where if you're losing post-war games as Delver to this kind of middling mid-range deck, then maybe Delver just is not a good choice in the abstract, because what happens when you get paired against like an intentional, like fully formed mid-range deck?
Right.
But I don't know.
All right. So Malamucho also wanted the Crushers of MTGO. I think he's mostly known for playing Death and Taxes and like weird like Delver style decks that have Stifle. So he could be like his range is pretty wide, but I would predict Wasteland. So I don't know. This is like fine versus Death and Taxes and Delver, so that's why I kept this hand. But as you'll soon find out, there are shenanigans afoot.
Underground Sea, Agadeem's Awakening,
Oh no, he's played Ant before as well, but he doesn't.
Okay,
he doesn't play Oops, but obviously, I think this hand is good enough for most of the format that I would keep. Now I'm just like Bant Blade? Question mark. At least this lightning bolt does something, right?
Yeah.
And note he fetched Savannah, not Trop, so there's no fear of days. So just bolt the bird, bolt the hierarch, I guess. Not really an ideal draw, but it's fine. Now I am thinking Stoneforge Mystic by this point, but no Stoneforge makes me like be. Maybe it's not Stoneforge.
Maybe they have Stoneforge and they're just trying to play around days if you're not doing anything in the meantime.
The Snow
Like
Forest gives it away though. Well,
maybe.
sort of. I guess maybe not actually.
Well, not before that point. Like, let's say the
Yeah.
hand was sword Stoneforge or something. They might want to swords your turn to Goy for whatever around days and then untap and play swords or Stoneforge or something. But
Now I'm just like Bant Miracle. Well, Bant mid range. I guess it's kind of all over the place. It's hard to identify the deck by this point.
it could be like the Gordu Cat band deck.
Yeah, he doesn't like Noble Hierarch though. So,
Oh, true.
and I think it's really weird not to like Noble Hierarch actually, but that's a different story.
Noble Hierarch is pretty cracked.
Is that good or bad? I'm a boomer.
It's good, Jarvis.
This is like a nightmare. I'm just like, God damn it.
I mean, you get to ballista shoot it, right? Or try to.
I guess. Do I? Oh no, I just bolt it. That makes more sense actually. I'm just replaying a Griffin.
I think I would like leading on ballista there instead.
Well, the reason I didn't was if you leave the Bliss in your hand, that means Food Chain is a kill, right?
It does, but if we have two invincible Griffins and Bolt and Uro backup, then I think we're probably okay from that spot. If we draw Food Chain.
Fair enough. Maybe
versus now we actually are somewhat more vulnerable to just random nonsense, but
maybe you're right there actually. I don't know. I thought it was fairly clear that I should bolt plus cast my Griffin, but maybe that's not right.
You definitely could be right.
And now the jig is up.
Hello?
There's no I'm just like, wait, what? We were playing a normal game. I'm like, wait, shit. I don't like this.
We've been bamboozled.
But to be fair, all of the cards they've played were played in Caleb D's Bant Food Chain deck. So now I'm like, oh god damn it. Now I hope to draw a Food Chain, but like Food Chain is literally the best card to draw right now, obviously.
Yeah, and it's not like the Allure Mirror where your card is symmetrical, and so you get into some like weird mind-bending game situations where it happens. Like Food Chain is just you, so you can go off.
A shout out to Aspiring Spike for rating us. Big raid. Welcome to the stream. We're going over the PTQ I played.
Good luck if you're playing the PTQ yourself this afternoon.
Yeah. GL. I will not be playing. I have other stuff to do. But I would probably register Heliod. I don't know. Deck seems cracked, as the kids say. Anyways, Miss Hollow Griffin. It's a Miss Hollow. There's Miss Hollow Griffins for all. There's no such thing as too many Miss Hollow Griffins. There's such a thing as too many lands, though. So I escape Uro, obviously, because why wouldn't I escape Uro, right? Force is decent at least. Like, it's better than a random card. Obviously, the other two lands are not appealing, but the Force is a decent draw there.
Really hurts to be the player without Caracas in the the Uro Mirror here.
But also, this card is cracked in the mirrors, actually. It's actually pretty good.
Jarvis, is this the situation where you learn a new word and then you just use it whenever possible?
Yes. How did you... you understand me so well. It's kind of funny.
And now we crack our Prismatic Vista and...
don't really find anything that good. I mean...
No.
Always be Uroing is what I say. Oh, we got our Phantom Monsters. Look at the power creep on Phantom Monster, right? We got Ranger Captain, so I'm like 100% dead. I knew about the Ballista, so I just packed it. Like, I hate wasting time.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to make your opponent click through the kill. It's another thing when you are also a Food Chain deck. Like, at least, show some respect for a comrade, All
right, so we're down a game. Quaddle does not much. Veil is, like, defensible, but I don't think... Especially when you know your opponent has Teferi 3, your Veils become a lot worse, in my opinion. Do you agree with that?
They can also even like Ranger Captain you so that they can force or whatever in a pinch. It's just
Yeah.
kind of rough.
I think maybe I shouldn't have taken out the bolts, but like the problem is bolts not that good, but killing a Ranger Captain or Teferi might actually matter with Lightning Bolt, so I don't know.
Is there a case for Magus on the Moon here?
I thought about that too, but they have Noble Hierarch and they're likely to side in Carpet as well, so I sided in my Carpet, so I expect them to do so as
But
well.
Jarvis, what if you just fetch a bunch of jewels and then Magus turns off your own jewels and they're not Inas anymore?
I don't know.
Did you think about that?
I didn't think about it, but that's a great question. I'm not. I think Magus is volatile and high variance, so that's why I didn't do it in this mirror. But
You
perhaps,
might be far enough behind that you kind of have to. I don't
yeah,
know.
I was actually thinking about that. Maybe if the matchup is not good, I should just try to like throw a wrench in the works, right? The first one was just a one-winder that didn't do anything. This hand's quite good though. This is a matchup where you can also basically get dual lands and it won't cost you very much. I do not expect my food chain opponent to have Wasteland in their deck. What do you think of that?
I would agree. I've seen stranger things happen there.
That's true. And the Manipulate Fate just snap resolve, so it's basically a draw four. Obviously, three of the cards that you're drawing are not like premium cards, but it's still a draw four, right? Oh, I didn't look at it closely, but it didn't look very good. It was like a Lightning Bolt and two trash cards. Thinking just do better. I think really what we're looking for is the Ballista Recruiter. So I was thinking about this more. Maybe siding out Coatl is bad. I'm not sure. Like the problem is it kind of just doesn't do anything, right?
In the games where it can be this like dark ritual cantrip split card, then maybe it's still good. But
By the way, I have combo set up, Food Chain, and Force plus Blast. If I want everything, I have to wait one turn, but I think it's okay to wait exactly one turn.
mm-hmm.
So that's basically the debate: is if you go for it this turn or next turn. And I think just going next turn with two backup spells makes sense. Wait,
You
what
play
happened?
Squee?
Oh, I did play Squee actually, but then it crashed again. The replay just crashed. It didn't even show me what happened
That's
next turn.
huh.
Great.
Do you remember what happened next turn?
I cast my spell, they forced, and I power blasted, and then they conceded.
Sure.
No, actually, what Mooch said in the chat was, if you do it from one, I'll scoop. So I did it from one, and he scooped. Now, I realized I was taking a risk by doing that, because if they don't scoop there, then I would just feel dumb, but, you know, I'm 5-2 in the tournament. It's not like...
It would be a great day of discourse if that happened.
I mean, I probably would roast someone on Twitter if they did that to me, but it also would ultimately be my fault, right?
I mean, sure.
Anyways, this hand in the mirror I would keep. It's not. It's. If it didn't have a brainstorm, I think it's like a mulligan. I don't know, but I don't think you can ever mulligan this hand. And the Earl is actually a pretty good draw because I can just like curve into it and like ramp a little, right? Classic Mog Fanatic, your Birds of Paradise. Do you love to see it or do you hate to see it?
Well, what does it tell you, more importantly?
That
Not much, probably, but
probably they're gonna play like a Teferi or some shit this turn. Or Uro, okay. Now I get to birds, which is kind of nice. And you know, I'm feeling fine. It's like exactly fine. It's not like insane or anything, but
Yeah, it's
but I'm
oof.
like, what the
I
fuck? They cited in surgical like. Okay, first off, I don't know if this is correct or not. I actually have generally no idea, but the information is actually pretty critical here too. I didn't even consider forcing this because I think that would be a huge mistake,
mhm.
personally.
It is I was gonna say it's unfortunate that they get to cast the first Uro or at least attempt it. But now it might be the only Uro because yours is getting taken away.
Yeah, the problem is like now the Euro game's one sided, and that's actually pretty annoying, right? So maybe I should have forced this. I don't know. Like I didn't, and
The problem is like even if you force it, they just resolve Uro this turn, right? And then
yeah,
you actually need I guess you brainstorm on your turn, but you still need more stuff to go right just to even attempt your own Uro. And then they could have swords or Caracas or something. So yeah, it's tricky.
no, I didn't consider saving the fetch for brainstorm because I thought developing the mana was more important. I have plenty of fetch lands in my deck. I don't think that's generally an issue. There's 10 fetch lands in this list, which is like two more than normal legacy decks. So, one thing to note, you should almost never force manipulate fate, even though it draws a bunch of cards. It's just three of the cards they draw are like not even that strong of magic cards. So it's more important to fight the combo pieces or the Uros, I think, rather than manipulate fate. So I think my best avenue to victory this game now is to just combo them because
Yeah.
like I can't play a fair game anymore. That was not a bad brainstorm. Like the carpet's going to produce quite a bit of mana. Now the question is, what do I do this turn?
I don't know how important the carpet actually is. Um, I
Right,
think I want to put back carpet and brainstorm maybe,
and just play food chain.
or we could use recruiter as a shuffle effect potentially,
Right.
or um, I think you put carpet and then one of the cantrips on top, and then go for food chain
Yeah, I think I
would
like
be my
that.
line.
That's exactly what happened, I guess. And now you can just say go and hope to find a griffin or something next turn. All right, unfortunate, but you're pressed into doing exactly one thing. You know, disaster.
Ugh.
I know. It's just I don't know. I can't really do anything about that, obviously, but it did not work out great. Now I feel really far behind because remember they still have this card, right? They just thought
Yeah,
doing other things was better, and that's
and,
like really terrifying, right?
and they've had three more looks at a potential forcible this turn, which is scary as well.
And now I'm just spamming cantrips to try to kill them because like I think it's clearly correct.
Yeah, I mean this is something for sure.
I mean, now if they hypothetically have nothing, I can recruiter for squee.
Yeah, this is lethal, right?
Oh, but I play the food chain this turn.
Well, yeah, you play the food chain because you need
Yeah,
to lead on that, right?
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, they have the force.
Right.
Terrible.
And they have their own carpet.
So now they get to at least escape Uro with Caracas protection.
Did the replay crash again? Nope. It was just being
Are they
slow.
just Griffin instead? Interesting.
I
I
don't know why they did that.
I
That's
don't know
weird.
about that. Yeah.
I'm trying to. The step one by one button seems to be kind of malfunctioning again, but I think I'm about to lose very soon, so we might not have to suffer for too much longer. Carpet has not looked good in these games. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not good in this mirror. By the way, they didn't cast Uro again, so what does that mean? It means they're leaving up like hard cast Force? And I think I know my top card's bad, so wait. I'm casting Ballista? I guess. Oh, you know what happened? It didn't show you this. They actually surgicaled my food chains.
Oh God, that's.
But it doesn't. There's no indication of it on the screen. But now I remember they surgicaled my food chains. So like now I'm just casting Ballista left and right. But now I think I'm just basically dead. The game state is not. It doesn't actually look like this. My food chains are no longer in my deck. Therefore, I can't actually ever combo them. It's just it's Moto replays are sometimes bugged, Alitair. There's nothing to do about it. Sometimes the bug just happens. Yeah.
Should we? Is it worth sticking it out and going over the
No.
last round?
Yes, it's worth doing that, but
Okay.
it's not worth looking
Right.
at that. All right, last round. This person has played quite a few different decks. They played 4-color Omnath in Legacy and also Shadow. So I know it's one of those two decks. I would much prefer for it to be 4-color Omnath because I think that matchup is much better than Shadow for this type of deck.
Yeah, I played against them on Shadow several times, and then I also saw someone who was playing Depths, so they got paired against them on Omnath, and they just had like Swords, Coatl, Caracas, Omnath to get above 20. Like it was just a complete nightmare matchup.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm multi 6. This is definitely a keep. Basically, versus both Shadow and 4-color Omnath. I think no matter the matchup, Bolt is bad versus both of those decks because the Shadow deck they've been playing lately has cut Delver of Secrets. So I just want to bottom the Lightning Bolt, which might seem weird, but it's just.
So what does that Delver or that not Delver, that Shadow deck, excuse me, look like now?
I don't know. I looked at it briefly and I was just like, Lightning Bolt doesn't look good versus this deck. It has more like Hymn to Torox and shit, if I recall correctly. So it's like a Jund deck. It's almost like Jund Shadow in Modern actually in a lot of ways, except the cantrips it gets to play are like really powerful, obviously. So yeah, now I'm just trying to like, I think the way you Force Island indicates the Omnath deck, especially since it's Island and Snow Forest. The reason to do that is Field of the Dead, and that indicates a 4-color Omnath deck to me.
It's still so wild to me that people have Field of the Dead and Omnath in the same deck, but
also,
like,
come on, really? I'm saying really because I don't think that card is good enough for Legacy. Anyways, I got a Coatl because my missing piece is actually Food Chain, and the only way you can find Food Chain off Recruiter is to draw cards, essentially. Look at this island not being a snow island. Although everything's a 1-1 right now, so it doesn't actually matter.
That is somewhat awkward, yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, there's like not anything in my deck that actually, like, there are no really vanilla big creatures in my deck that actually care, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe Missile Griffin is the one that cares.
Yeah, you don't care that much, but just if they get paired against Delver or something, you can imagine that being a sticking point.
So Ooze was a good draw here because they have an Uro in yard. So I can Ooze, force their force or whatever, and eat the Uro. Because it looks like that's their primary game plan this game, right? I put the Bolt back because I just don't think Bolt is good versus this matchup, really.
Agreed.
Like, the games are not about removing any of their creatures. The games are about, well, frankly, just trying to combo them, I think is what the games are actually about, right?
Yeah, this is all working out pretty nicely. I don't know if you're meant to not activate there. Oh, Jesus. Just because if they have to go like Uro and then do something in between cracking a fetch or whatever, then you get a window to eat the new Uro as well. But
I think it's just my reasoning was some of their old lists had a lightning bolt, so I wanted to have a full
Sure,
four ooze.
sure.
Anyways, obviously I have to force this. Primeval Titan, you know more. Actually, we probably know the same amount about Primeval Titans, but it is a messed up magic card. They have the force back, so I'm probably biting it to this Primeval Titan if I don't combo them quickly by this point, but my hand's not really close to that whatsoever. Like, I can play Manipulate Fate and... Wait, actually, if this Manipulate Fate draws me Food Chain, they're dead.
Yeah.
So, that's fine. I mean, get the bad cards out of my deck. I think I thinned my deck of a Birds of Paradise. Because one thing about Manipulate Fate is you actually have to search for 3 cards no matter what, because there's no search restriction on it. So it looks confusing because it looks like the bird I searched for went in my hand, but it actually went into the exile. I drew a birds.
Oh
I
my
was I
god.
was I was confused for a second. I'm like, what? Wait, what happened? And then I just realized, wait, no, that it did work correctly. Um, I don't know if you knew this. Primeval Titan kills really fast, especially when it's Grave Titan in disguise, right?
Sure does.
All right,
We get
so
wasted. Jeez.
I mean, I escape a row, but I believe I'm down board anyways. So, am I? They cycled Rug Triumph. I refuse to call it anything else because I don't know the actual name of that card.
Would it be Cater Triumph, the Apocalypse?
Oh
Or wait,
god. No, I don't. Dega? I don't know.
Digger is Mardu, isn't it?
Possibly.
Or
Who knows?
Savai, if you're that way
It might
inclined.
be Seta, but whatever. So their 4-color Omnath. I think this is pretty straightforward. Lightning Bolt is pretty bad. Birds is not great because I saw that they had sideboard Pyroclasm. I really don't want to have Birds of Paradise in my deck if I think they're siding in Pyroclasm, and it's kind of tempting for them to do that anyways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I sided in Carpets, Veils. I didn't side in Force Negation because I don't think I need that really. And I did side in Magus of the Moon, but as it turns out, that might actually be a mistake. I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens. All right, well, you can't keep this ever, so. But you can keep this one, and it has a game plan of trying to like veil Magus of the Moon into play and see if their deck falls to it, right?
Mm.
So if you're doing that, do you just bottom a Ponder?
I guess so, because we don't really know exactly what we want from the Ponder either. I guess if we do think we're all in on the Magus, then just a Force to protect it might be good, but
Alatar, if you want to modify this deck to be better for yourselves, you can play like a second Static Caster. You could even play something hateful like Blazing Volley, I guess. But like a pair of Static Casters sounds pretty appealing to me if you're playing against a lot of elves. Yeah, so let's see what I do. Oh, I bottom Coatl. Actually, that makes some sense too.
yeah, because it's the Death Touch doesn't matter, and the body is unlikely to matter too, because they go so far out over the top of what we're doing that doesn't matter too much.
Shuffle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's either shuffle or just try to spam ponders looking for something good, but I don't. I think you're supposed to just. Yeah, you should just shuffle then, because there's a good chance you just draw another cantrip anyways, and then you won't. You don't want to waste time getting through those cards, right? All right, we almost have it in place, Dom. We almost have it in the lock is almost in place. Um, Pretty good one. Like I think I want all these cards really, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the squee is the most conditional of those. We want the option to shuffle it away without needing to burn the brainstorm yet. But
And I'm waiting a turn for the protected Magus, obviously, but you know. All right. They're spinning their wheels a lot. I kind of feel like that deck actually does spin its wheels a lot because it's full of growth spirals, ponders, and brainstorms, right? All right, well, awkward that we shuffled the squee away, but I think the thing is squee is the more replaceable part of the deck, right? Because you have so many ways to find it.
It is. I don't know how much the ballista is going to be doing by itself either, but just the fact that it's more unique is a good enough reason to hold that instead.
Right. So I'm fetching, and I mean, I'm going to see if they're dead to this. Obviously, this Flooded Strand untapped makes me kind of unhappy. Yeah, I mean, that was actually fairly likely, I think.
Your kingdom for an actual blood moon.
I don't know about that, but I'm just like, what the fuck? I mean, like, first off, I'm not even convinced that this card is good. Like, but people came to brew. They put a brainstorm back in their hand. Fine.
I say what our 4-color clunky deck needs is another clunky value engine. We don't have enough of those already.
So I veiled their force, and obviously draw manipulate fate. So everything's looking excellent for next turn.
Until, I'm assuming is where this is going.
They named engineered explosives with their Tomeo. Interesting. So maybe they actually cut Pyroclasm for engineered explosives. Interesting. I think they're arrowing this turn. And I think similar to the matchup played against Bug, I don't force this arrow because I think it's okay to give them one draw to have the ability to protect my combo in this turn cycle, right?
Yeah. It is unfortunate with how we fetch that we can't, unless we draw a land, we can't.
Why would you ever doubt me? Why would you doubt me, Dom? Why would you doubt it? So I think I lead with the collateral.
Although this is, do we have a thing in exile yet?
I have a manipulate fate.
I guess we do, but if
I need to draw another blue card, and boom. Why would you doubt me?
What I'm saying is, if we just cast manipulate there, don't we win without needing to find another blue card? Because we get squee and then.
How am I casting squee off Island, Forest, Mountain?
Because we do Tarn, so we fetch a Regiel, right?
Oh, I see. Actually, his potential I punted then.
We had like 3 extra chances to throw the game, and we got bailed.
Yeah, okay. I guess I actually threw it then.
But we can win from here.
All right. This is the least interesting part of the games. That's the nice thing. You can just skip. Yeah, I punted. All right. Well,
you blew it, Jarvis.
Fortunately, this matchup is so good that I think it's going to be fine. I end up taking the Magus out.
Are these famous last words, or okay?
I don't know. You'll find out. Excellent hand. Like, this is basically close to what you want in the matchup. You have a cantrip, you have a manipulate fate, you have protection, and I don't know. Like, they don't really kill you very quickly. The one thing this hand is soft to is Wasteland Recursion, actually. But a fetch is a good draw there because it means they can't just, like, try to lean into that plan. I think I just cast the Fate. And they force it. I'm like, okay, I actually don't need that too much, right?
It is nice that just a naked manipulate fate is often worth a force by itself against these blue decks.
And I don't feel any inclination to fight over it because I'm like, I don't actually need it.
No.
There's the waste. So now things are getting scary. But you know what? I drew another manipulate fate, and there's only 2 in my deck, so I'm a genius.
Or are you a noob blocker, Jarvis?
I'm probably a noob blocker. Yeah, so Some people might not brainstorm there because they're scared of getting brainstorm locked. I think it's probably a mistake not brainstorm.
I mean, you can get brainstorm locked by brainstorm going badly, or you can get brainstorm locked by just not casting brainstorm, right? Like if
That's true.
you gotta cast it there. Is there an argument for just playing the use out?
No, because I think it's too important to get one activation out of it on the Uro if the game comes out. I think I can play the game really slow and take care of all of their stuff before trying to do anything else.
Oh, but this is...
I actually force the loam because I think I can just
Yeah.
eat both on this turn cycle, and it makes 100% sense to do so, right?
It's kind of annoying that we have to burn our fetch there after we draw brainstorm, but I think you're
That's
right
fine.
that you have to do it.
And look, they had the plow, so if we had deployed ooze on that one turn cycle, we might be losing to Uro about now instead of just having cleaned everything up, right?
Yeah, it's a good call.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just feel like this matchup is so easy if you play carefully because their deck doesn't really do anything really that threatening. I mean, like, kind of just clicking buttons by this point, literally and figuratively speaking.
Ooh, second food chain is kind of nice too.
Yeah, so you can just shove one, see if they force it. If they force it, you don't care. Like that. They'll eventually run out of cards, you know? By the way, for those of you who are wondering why I didn't attack, the reason not to attack is if they have a second collateral, it actually forces a trade. So I feel like the damage doesn't actually matter because when I kill them, it's going to be for infinite damage, you know? And well, that's my PTQ. 6-3. 5-0 into 6-3 is kind of a bad, like a feels bad, man. But you know, you and I have played so many tournaments that have gone like that, right? Like,
yeah, and I feel like I've had actually a decent number of those spots recently, but that's kind of, to me, like you start off a tournament well, that doesn't automatically mean or entitle you to do well in the rest of the tournament.
Yep.
It's almost like you kind of get to this midway checkpoint from a good position, and then you see how the cards fall from there, you know? And it's just about giving yourself enough shots from a good starting position that you can eventually convert one of them. So, you know, yeah, sometimes you go 5-0 to 6-3, it sucks. Other times, you know, you are able to get the other, you know, 60% or whatever it is from that spot and go on from there.
I think round 6, game 3, like, I think I was like fine, but then the cards didn't break well after our initial hands. Round 7, game 3 also felt the same way. And I think round 8, game 3, I actually just got annihilated in sideboarding, which is actually what happened. It sounds funny to say that, but I think what actually happened was the way we both sideboarded, it was going to be very difficult for me to win once the Uro got surgicaled.
Yeah, that last ponder on, I think it was round 7, game 3, maybe was a turning point, but like we don't know how things would have converted from there instead. So
yeah, but also if the relic had been a recruiter, I would have actually just insta-killed my opponent, which is kind of funny. But
right.
I mean, there are reasons to not have all of the recruiters in your deck versus Rug Delver because it is a 3-drop, and like realistically, how many 3-drops can you have? It's just like relic is also still good in the Uro mirrors.
Yeah,
is that a problem?
And the consequences of that choice are most stuck in that moment, whereas if I had, like, this is a one of that I cut another card for, and if I had the other card, I would win on the spot.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it's a game where you get dazed and wastelanded out of it or whatever, or you lose to an Uro and you had a redundant recruiter in your hand, I don't know if your mind would immediately jump to, oh, if this was a relic, I actually would still be in this instead.
Right. No, I think on average, you're supposed to have relic, and you're supposed to have it in your deck. The question is what cards are you precisely supposed to side out in that matchup? I think the plan is still a little bit up in the air, which is a little bit of a problem. If you want to play this deck in the PTQ on Sunday, you might want to focus on like really hammering that down, you know?
So how would you, like, if you were running this deck back, how would you change it going ahead?
All right. Let's look at it again to answer that question because it's a complicated question. I think that I'm really happy with the main deck, and it's just the question of can the sideboard be tightened up a little bit more? I guess the Fairy Macabre maybe should just get the axe, right? That's what you mentioned. And to come to think of it, I did not cite it in. Obviously, it would be nice to have in some spots, but your point about it, if you have to recruit for it, is it fast enough, is actually a good point.
And that could even be another relic or something if you're leaning hard into this transformative plan.
I mean, another card you could have is just simply like you could have the Crisis in the sideboard, and that's not like terrible. There's certainly a bunch
don't like that. I think.
I'm just saying you could.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you should. Another card that's like reasonable is like a third carpet. Although I kind of think over 2 carpets is a little bit overkill, even though it's like obviously a great card.
Could a third Pyroblast be?
Oh yeah,
be good.
Third Pyroblast is reasonable. Yeah, I don't think you can cut the Magus, the Oof, the Sage, or the Staticaster. You can't really cut the Carpets or the Veils, and you can't cut the Fawns. So the problem with that is the sideboard is actually relatively tight as it is, right?
Yeah, and you want the Euro as well, so yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just turning Macabre into a third Pyroblast or something, or maybe a Force Figure if you expect a lot of the Artifact deck or Moonstompy.
Or if you actually expect a lot of those types of decks, even a second Collector Oof is not unreasonable if you expect a lot of Mystic Forge.
Yeah.
4x Toski? No, I don't even want the first Toski. Toski was like... I hate to say it. I think he just played it. Musabi just played it because it was fun. I don't think it's actually good.
Someone said in chat that Musasabi like streamed their challenge runs and didn't like resolve it a single time or something.
Didn't cite it in once, I think. Or never searched for it. I don't know. It's weird.
In all seriousness, I do think that Toski sees more play than it should, solely because it's a squirrel, and people like squirrels.
Oh, who are you, Brian Gottlieb?
I mean, I also like squirrels, but I try to not let that influence my card choices too much.
One thing before we go, we can actually take a look at the data that was collected about the PTQ. I think that might be interesting for people.
Yeah,
and what I'm actually going to do is sort by this column, which is win rate, with mirrors, because I don't know. I guess without mirrors is kind of the same. There's a lot, but
from a statistician's perspective, you want without mirror, right?
It's I mean it's technically the same, really, because all of them are accounting for mirrors. Let's see. Hold on. Actually, I need to select the entire range and choose which column to select.
I guess without mirror is more true to what it should be, because like let's say you think Delver is the most popular deck, your win rate, depending on how popular Delver is, matters a lot. And if you take mirrors out of the equation, that changes things for Delver itself versus some non-Delver deck.
All right, I managed to sort it the way I wanted to. All right, number 1, not the biggest N, Sneak and Show. Well,
2 players and 1 is JPA. Moving on.
All right, 2 players. They actually did count the timeout loss as a loss for him, even though like I probably would have just removed it personally, but it's kind of whatever. It doesn't matter. So that means he went 11-1, and the other person went 6-3. So that's pretty reasonable, but I don't know. Sneak and Show is Sneak and Show. If you like that deck, it's reasonable. It's almost always reasonable, I think, is the actual reality of it.
Yeah, there are a bunch of decks here with 1 to 3 players who, one person going 7-2 or something will skew the results fairly heavily, but Food Chain actually is the first deck with a reasonable number of pilots that shows up on this list.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that this happened, because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe I was spewing a little bit, but it's, like I said, my intuition said something felt off about stock Rug Delvers, so I'm just like, all right, I'll play Food Chain instead. I still don't know what is off about it to me, except that Uro is kind of kludgy in the Delver deck is the reality, I think.
Can you build a deck that has most of the Delver components, but like enables Uro harder, maybe at the cost of Delver itself?
The problem with that is you sacrifice a lot of your combo matchups, I think is the reality. Like, Daze becomes a lot worse without Delver in the deck.
Yeah, I can believe that. And then the next popular deck on the list actually is Hogak, which surprises me somewhat because even though Delver is 12% of the tournament, in the previous metagame pre-bans,
Mm.
The idea behind Hogak was you're bad against just like random stuff that people show up with, but you're good against all the blue decks. So if Delver is 20% of those tournaments, and then Snowco, Miracles in some form are also quite popular, then and you think those will be a big part of the winners metagame because those decks are so good, then Hogak starts to look like a good choice. For this tournament, you've got 12% Delver, but then Elves is maybe quite a popular deck.
Mm-hmm.
The blue control decks don't seem to be making that many waves. So maybe it's better than against the non-blue decks than I was giving it credit for, or maybe those Hogak players, like, if the blue deck still were doing well, then you get the same winners metagame propulsion effect. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I think the Rug Delver deck having Uro in game one for Hogak is actually bad for it. Like, I think Uro is actually kind of a big problem, and leads to a lot of weird game one losses that normally would be very easy, right?
I kind of agree with that. You would still much rather play against Uro than like Arcanist plus Oko.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, your draws where you just like dump a bunch of power into play, sometimes Uro can clean those up by itself. You do still have Ultra and so on to get around that, but
Well,
um,
Uro also cleans up Bridge from below, which is actually super nice.
yeah, that part is really unfortunate.
Just an unfortunate sacrifice this. Wait, where did my bridges go? Wait, oh shit.
We then have Elves, which had something of a breakout weekend here, and then
Yeah.
also in the previous week, at like
Yeah.
two in the top four of the NRG event, and then I
Mm-hmm.
think did fairly well in some of the other tournaments.
Yeah, so that one's interesting to me because when I tried the deck in, it's really unpleasant to play that deck against Plague Engineer. Like, if you pair into Plague Engineer too many times, you will not do well in the event. But it looks like these people mostly like either they had a better plan for Plague Engineer or they didn't encounter it too often. I don't know what the truth is.
I think the second part of that is quite likely because I don't know how convenient it is to sort by number of players or metagame share.
Mm.
But just looking at this list at a glance, Rock Delver, Blue Red Delver, the Elves Mirror, Hogak, Band Control, which crucially does not have black in it, Red Prison. Um, the most popular deck that can play Engineer if it wants to even is Bug Control at like 5%.
But remember, I was shit talking it. I was shit
Yeah.
talking it for a good reason. I really do believe the deck is just. I believe that deck is a bad version of Bug Delver, and I don't think Bug Delver is good either. So
Yeah, I think there should be some bug shell that is good because you have so many good cards in there, but you actually need to build it with a lot of care, I think.
yeah. So I don't know. Like, kind of interesting to see these non-blue decks do pretty well, relatively speaking, and like with a pretty large N, not just a small N. You know.
Yeah. We after Elves, you see Omnitel and Doomsday both with roughly the same number of pilots and roughly the same win rate. And those decks are kind of occupying a similar space in the
Yep.
metagame, I would say. And the gambit behind those normally is, yeah, your Delver matchup is still an uphill struggle, despite what, the pilots of both of those decks would tell you. But you are very good against most other things. And there are definitely decks on this list that really struggle to beat a deck like Doomsday consistently.
Yeah, or we could get lucky and have your opponent misclick the pile and
Sure.
die. Like that's the funny thing about Doomsday is if you actually misclick, you will die. Like it, it's just It's a feature of the deck, right? It's not a bug. It's literally what the deck is. Someone's dead when Doomsday's cast. Who it is, who can say? So Rogue Delver is still pretty popular. It still is, a fine deck to choose. I didn't pick it because I thought I guess I'm spoiled. I won't want to pick this deck when it's broken, if that makes sense.
And bear in mind, this is a very impressive win rate, given that it is by far the most popular deck as well. Like normally,
Mm-hmm.
um, even if like you go back to, let's say, the Render 6 days or the Arcanist Oko days, even when the deck is completely broken, if there are that many people playing it, then that's going to include a lot of people who are less experienced. And then
Yeah.
if you factor in the mirror, then the win rate kind of converges towards the middle. But
Yep.
actually, 50 over 55% still at by far the most players at the field. That's good. That's really impressive.
Yeah, and let's just say decks you should not pick. All right. There's a lot of those. Is all I'll say.
Depths at 37.5%.
Yeah,
Hate to see it.
burn and I'm so it's kind of weird. I actually think depths is positioned well, but it's hard to build it correctly. And a lot of depths variants got grouped together.
Yeah.
Like all of the white, green, black, green, rainbow probably all got grouped together, so it's kind of hard to distinguish because those decks actually play out reasonably differently in my experience as well.
And then the Khan Echo deck, which I'm assuming they've separated out because they had Mystic Forge combo
Yeah,
above.
yeah,
I'm assuming this means the Emery Urza list.
it does.
8 pilots, 36% win rate. So
Please, yeah, don't do that. Also, Eldrazi somewhere really not good. Whoops. Fortunately, I made a copy of this spreadsheet so I could actually edit it. But I don't know. It's a tough time to not be one in this. I would say anything not in this tier is probably you have to think good and hard while you're doing it. I guess maybe death and taxes and banter is still fine as well. Um, but it it just really concerns me when you see like 20 players of death and taxes like slightly below 50%. I don't know. Like I don't like it when there's a reasonably large end and you're still below 50%, if that makes sense.
mhm. Yeah, I think with Death and Taxes, that's another thing where the Death and Taxes Masters will always do well, but then I know, especially in like Mana Traders matches or whatever, you face a lot of bad Death and Taxes players. So like, no surprise at all that Colin Roundtree won the Super with it, right? But like, you are not Colin Roundtree, if probably. So be aware of that.
Yeah, I am definitely not Colin Roundtree. First off, my name I don't have enough vowels in my last name to be Colin Roundtree. How
I'm
about
gonna
you?
say I'm gonna put this out there. The second L in Colin really unnecessary. Just over the top, way too
It
much.
drives me nuts actually. Why are there
We we
two
we,
L's in Colin Roundtree?
we can economize. We can get rid of that one.
Yeah, a bunch of these decks and with small number of players is also a questionable choice. I agree with that. Sing, how would you pronounce that? Sign Germ Zero,
Singamo? I don't know.
Singamo.
How do you feel about lands 4%? 50
It's funny.
3%
I
win rate.
almost switched to it because I did get a 5-0 the day before, but something bothers me about the deck. I think the softness to Force of Negation or Competent Delver Pilots still bothers me too much to actually play it. Because I'm not going to play a deck just because I have fun playing it when I'm trying to win. Even
Yeah.
though, like, I think lands is probably fine, but it's going to be hard to win the tournament or make top two.
Yeah, stuff like food chain can be an issue too. Like Doomsday and Omnitel, horrific Mystic Forge combo. Like there's a big swathe of this metagame that you really do not want to get paired against. Red Prison sometimes.
Well, so the funny thing is, I think the red person matchup is pretty bad in game one. In game two, you often cheese them. In game
Yes.
three, you often cheese them with stupid rules change that made it really easy for you to cheese them.
It's a great rules change, Jarvis.
Oh, I agree. I probably told this story before, but I'll tell it one last time. I played against Ross Miriam round two of a classic, and he's playing red person, playing black green. And like game one, I actually kill him on turn two because I was on the play. Game two, he has a turn one Trinisphere. I don't do anything. He has a turn two Blood Moon. I play Depths Go. And turn three, he just like does something that doesn't matter. On his turn four and stuff, I just like kill his Blood Moon with Force of Vigor and he loses.
Love to see it.
Yeah, it was a really stupid. Like Force of Vigor is kind of a broken card. Is the real reason.
Yeah, it's mostly obnoxious in Vintage, where it's just like I'm kind of glad that you have this safety valve against sharps because you don't want that deck to be too good either. But it's just kind of a nonsense card to have exist in Magic, I think.
Do you remember when Rack and Ruin was like a vintage playable card?
I do, yeah. Like
Do
that
you,
was the tech that people found to like craft shops at the time.
and then Ancient Grudge power crept it out. Then now Force of Vigor power crept that out. Maybe, although it's different because you have to be heavy green to play Force of Vigor, or you just have to have Bazaar of Baghdad in your deck, not really care what cards you put in your deck, as long as some of them cast the thing you want to, right?
What's kind of sick now is there are so many good blue-green cards that pitch to both
Right.
blue forces and to Force of Vigor. So, you see a lot of the like Uro piles in Vintage now, where like, yeah, they have 4 Force of Will main decks and Force of Negations, and then just 3 to 4 Force of Vigor sideboard, and you really cannot compete with that as most shop decks.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know. I think generally speaking, to summarize all of this, Legacy is in a relatively healthy place. It's just make sure what you're doing is actually good enough for the format. There's probably a bunch of angles to attack the format from that I'm still not thinking of. Just make sure your thing is actually good enough. I would implore you to do that.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. Any closing remarks before we get out of here?
Well, are you playing